I'm Councilmember Jose Huizar. I've been joined by Councilmember Harris Dawson, Councilmember Englander, and Councilmember Price. This is the Planning and Land Use Management Committee. We will first go through the consent calendar and see if we could approve these items. I'm sorry, no, we will do first is go through the multiple item public comment cards. We take the cards for which people have submitted to speak on more than 2 items. After we finish this, then we will go to the consent calendar. So on the multiple comment card agenda, we have Herman. Are you here, Herman? Not here? Is he in the waiting room? All right. Yeah. Write that down. 2 minutes, right? Welcome, Herman. You have 2 minutes.
Well, there's only 300 people out there. How the hell do you expect someone to get in here? Blocking the doorways and the aisles. Since we're on item 1, in consideration of old business and part of the new business spoken here today, Plum has done a horrible job with the eyesores of work programs, eyesores of operations, due to visual blight with digital signs. Another city planning policy disruption to our community for the so-called eyesores you create in our communities. And then they go into item 2, CD 11, not so fucking important, pass. Then I go to CD 12. Yeah, there he is, the Dibble Dwarf from the hills up there, the gas man, regarding consideration, mitigation measures, wetbacks mitigation monitoring programs, and related California immigration at 100%. I oppose to CD 12, Mitch Englander. And then we go to the other item under CD 12, item 8, for the overriding. I think you should allocate this process immediately and allow the people to have their project done. And then I go into my, I got 40 seconds, not general public comment. It's a real goddamn shame that Plum continues to violate our civil rights to allow us to only speak 1 fucking minute. All you people here today should be speaking for 2 minutes on the most important issues that involve the quality of life in your community, in your home, and how you expect to build in your home. This permit process is so fucking racketeering and fucked up. You have to bring a bag like mine to slip the 20s and the 50s to the poverty pimps in Plum who've created this indecent, uncontemptible jurisdiction of false lies and permit process and litigation. So on behalf of the public and politically correct, fuck you.
Thank you, Mr. Herman. So I'd just like to announce that we have an overflow room on the 10th floor at room 1050. Also, there's a speaker out in the hallway. And we apologize for the accommodations here today. We attempted to have the public council meeting, the chamber room, but it was taken, so we had the smaller public works room. But there's overflow rooms and or a public speaker in the hallway if you would like to listen to this meeting. Okay, so moving on to item number 2. There are no cards, and we will approve that on consent if there are no objections. So ordered. Item number 3, we will continue to June 13th without objection. Item number 4, we can continue, we will approve on consent without objection. Item number 5, the applicant is here, Kenneth Marker. Kenneth Marker here. Item 5, which is report from South Valley APC and draft ordinances for properties located at 6643. You'll pass? Okay. Number 5, sir. Welcome.
I am the developer and the owner of the property. We went through a lot of stuff to get to this point.
Yeah.
With doing a lot of things to help out all the neighbors and doing a change to make exactly what all the homeowners in the area wanted. So
It's on,
everybody's happy.
Everybody's happy. It's on consent, so we'll move it forward. Okay.
Perfect.
So with that, we'll move it forward and approve and adopt the conditions submitted by the planning department. Have you seen those, sir? Okay. So we'll approve that item and adopt the conditions that's submitted by the planning department. Without objection, so ordered. Thank you. Thank you, sir. Item number 6, we will approve on consent without objection. Item number 7 and 8, we will continue to June 13th. 7 and 8 continue to June 13th. Item number 17, we will deny in as much as the appeal has been withdrawn. Item 17. All right, so that leaves us, we could go back to item number 1, which is the report from the Director of Planning, Mr. Bertoni. Welcome.
Thank you, Chair Weezer and members of the committee. I will defer my report to next week.
Okay, thank you very much. We will receive and file item number 1. 15 and 16, let me see, we have, okay. 1 second. Okay, do we have item 15 and 16? We will continue. Do we have a date certain on that? No date certain? Okay, we will continue item 15 and 16 at the 15 and 16, yeah, at the request of the local council office. We will continue item 15 and 16. Okay. So that leaves us with items 9 through 14. Item 9 has a number of cards, and 11, 12, 13, and 14 are a number of other items for which impact our housing policy. So we could begin and ask staff to come up and present on item number 9, please. Welcome. For the record, Mrs. Cedillo is here as well. Thank you.
Good afternoon, council members. I'm Ken Bernstein, Principal City Planner overseeing the Citywide Policy Division for the Department of City Planning, and we're pleased to present to you this afternoon the Affordable Housing Linkage Fee Ordinance, which was considered and recommended for approval by the City Planning Commission in February. I think you all know that Los Angeles is experiencing an unprecedented affordable housing crisis. We have the most severe mismatch between incomes and housing costs of any major city in the nation, with more than 430,000 families struggling to make ends meet with their housing costs. Our recent housing needs assessment has determined we need to have an additional 4,000.
Thank you very much. One second, if you could hold on. We would ask members of the public to please keep your conversations low, or if you really need to have extended conversations, please take them outside. The echoes in these chambers really resonate throughout the room, and so it gets loud in here quite quickly. Thank you very much. Continue. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Our recent housing needs assessment determined we need to bring an additional 4,000 affordable units of housing online every year to overcome this challenge. The Affordable Housing Linkage Fee is therefore the centerpiece of the city's plan to end the housing crisis, a policy that is meant to enable the city to fund and incentivize more than 1,000 units of affordable housing each year. The proposed ordinance before you today has been the result of a close partnership between our department and the Housing and Community Investment Department, Department, HCID. And before I go into the details of the proposed ordinance, I wanted to introduce HCID's General Manager, Rushmore Cervantes, to share a few words with you.
Thank you. Welcome.
Thank you very much, Ken, and good afternoon, council members. This is a very exciting day for HCID in the city of Los Angeles. As Ken aptly put, we have a housing crisis. The city of Los Angeles is one of the only large cities in the country without a permanent dedicated source of funding for affordable housing. The city took major steps with HHH to address the homeless crisis, but yet, as we've seen with the recent homeless count, much more needs to be done. A dedicated source of funds such as that you have before you now, I must say, as a person who represents the housing department and is in charge of financing affordable housing, I would like to see the fees even higher. We need that much in the way of resources to be able to create the kind of financing and create enough affordable housing throughout the city of Los Angeles. So that being said, I know you're going to hear a lot of testimony about this particular matter, but just keep in mind, with the elimination of the redevelopment agency, home federal funds that are at risk right now really put into question what kind of resources we will have available for affordable housing. This has been a long time coming, and we look forward to a conversation about how we can implement the linkage fee and get product on the street as quickly as possible. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you. Mr. Hold on. We have a question from Mr. Harris Dawson.
I have a question for Mr. Cervantes. I just wanted to get a sense of, you named some of the sources of revenues for affordable housing that have gone away or declined significantly. Could you give us an idea of what the high point, sort of what the normal point is, and what you project in the future if we do nothing, the resources that will be available for affordable housing?
Well, at one point, council member, before the redevelopment agency was eliminated, at the peak we had about $106 million, $107 million at our fingertips. Now we rely solely on home entitlements and program income. That ranges about between $25 and $28 million per year. Other than that is particularly low-income housing tax credit financing, either 9%, 4% bond financing. So that's the limit of that. As it relates to the state level, there are the cap and trade dollars, which is the affordable housing and sustainable community grant dollars. And in 2018 or so, the county should be receiving about $600 million in former mental health dollars, No Place Like Home. So those are resources that are coming, but that's primarily and exclusively for homelessness. So as it relates specifically to resources available for affordable housing, it's really the diminishing home funds. If the home funds are eliminated, we will have absolutely zero funds to be able to match with either 4%, 9% tax credits. So there will be nothing to bear.
So your projections for the next 3 to 5 years, say nothing changes, and Washington does what it says it's going to do. Mm-hmm. What's your projection?
Well, we will have strictly HHH dollars and creating affordable housing. But that's not what's in play here. As it relates to affordable housing, we will have no other sources of monies, essentially. We will have to basically just do it with very expensive bond financing, which would be extremely expensive, but that's not really a viable option. You need some sort of dedicated gap financing to be able to make it a reasonably priced product. Again, if Washington proceeds with what they project right now, which is the elimination of the home program, reduction in CDBG, community development block grant dollars, we will have $0 to be able to finance affordable housing.
Thank you very much.
So now, if I may just describe the proposal that is before you this afternoon. The Linkage Fee Ordinance has been informed by considerable study and market analysis to minimize its impact on economic development and job creation, and to make sure that the fee doesn't depress investment in those communities that need it most. The Department of City Planning oversaw the preparation of an independent nexus study to establish the legal basis for such a fee. This included a detailed economic study that determined the specific amounts that developers could reasonably pay in various real estate markets across the city. The proposed fee that's before you today is just a tiny fraction of the legally justified nexus fee that was justified in the study, and also significantly lower than most across most development categories in the amount that was determined feasible in the economic study. The recommendation from our department, which was considered and then reconfirmed by the City Planning Commission, was to set the commercial fee, the non-residential fee, at $5 per square foot and the residential fee at $12 per square foot. A reduced fee of $1 per square foot would apply to any small multifamily project with 5 or fewer units. While our recommendation was to have a single low to moderate based fee across the city, the economic feasibility study was specifically structured to account for the fact that the real estate market varies significantly in neighborhoods across the city. During our discussion, I'm happy to go into greater detail as to why the department considered but did not ultimately recommend an approach to create different fee levels for different areas of the city. Instead, our recommendation seeks to create a clear, predictable, and moderate fee level with fee amounts specifically set well below the economically feasible maximums in order to ensure that this approach will remain feasible during various market swings or downturns in the economy, as well as across different markets of the city. And in making our recommendation, the department also fully analyzed the linkage fees feasibility in the context of other development fees, and most specifically including recently adopted fees such as the Quimby fee increase. The ordinance built in a number of exemptions from the fee in order to avoid unintended consequences or potential conflicts with other policy goals. Those exemptions included an exemption for any new construction or addition to a single-family detached home, resulting in an increase of less than 1,500 square feet, an exemption for small non-residential developments with less than 15,000 square feet of new floor area. We created an exemption after Measure JJJ was approved by voters in November. We wanted to make sure we avoided hitting those Measure JJJ projects twice, and therefore exempted residential projects that included that Measure JJJ threshold of affordability, 11% very low income, 20% low income, or 40% moderate units. And there were even further exemptions for projects developed by a governmental entity for government or community use, an exemption for all accessory dwelling units, ADUs, and given concerns about food deserts and the accessibility of grocery stores in our communities, an exemption for new grocery stores which are not located within a third of a mile of an existing grocery store. The recommendation also was to phase in the new ordinance, that it will not take effect for an additional 6 months upon adoption to allow for an adjustment period by the development community. And the Commission recommended that the Council direct HCID to report back within 6 months of adoption with a detailed expenditure plan for how these funds will be utilized. And with HCID, we will be preparing annual reports to Council on the fee expenditures. The ordinance has the potential to generate annual revenues of between $95 million and $116 million per year for affordable housing, based on whether the assumption is looking at a development average over the last 28 years, which would be $95 million, or looking just at the last 5 years, which would be $116 million. This would fund the development of affordable housing, and this estimate includes the set of deductions, exemptions, and credits in the ordinance before you. We also note that several other cities across California and throughout the nation have similar fees, linkage fees, or in lieu fees to fund affordable housing. The proposed fee levels for Los Angeles are higher than many of those cities, lower than many as well. So we really do fall somewhere within the middle of the range, and our proposed fees are lower on a per square foot basis than the fees in neighboring cities in Los Angeles County, including Pasadena, Santa Monica, and West Hollywood. To conclude, it's important to acknowledge that the affordable housing linkage fee is not a panacea. It is far from the only solution to our affordable housing crisis, and indeed on today's agenda we have several other items that speak to the provision of housing supply, streamlining our processes for affordable housing development, creation of permanent supportive housing, and more. And we welcome the discussion of some of these topics as well, but the proposed ordinance is clearly a centerpiece of the overall strategy and is also meant to provide developers with clarity and certainty about what the expectations of the city are in terms of community benefits that are expected to produce related to affordable housing as part of their project. We thank you for your consideration, and I'm joined here today by my colleagues Claire Bowen and Matt Glesney from our citywide policy team, as well as by Mr. Cervantes, Claudia Monterosa, and Marisol Romero from HCID, and we're happy to take any questions.
Mr. Harris Dawson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for your report. I think it is fodder for a lot of good conversation, which we'll have today. I have a sort of beginning question that I think will lead into a host of other discussions. So you talked about there being a feasibility study, and you said we set a number that's lower than what we found to be feasible. My crystal ball tells me there are going to be a lot of people that get up and claim we can't build anymore, we won't be able to produce any housing, this is going to be a drag on development, and in fact the fee that you're proposing is not feasible. So could you talk about your methodology for arriving at this opinion around feasibility and sort of what the pluses and minuses to that approach to coming to that opinion are?
Certainly. And we do, I would, if you'd like to delve a little deeper, we do have representatives from the firm that prepared the feasibility study, BAE, Bay Area Economics, who are here today as well. The feasibility study, as part of the Nexus study, looked at a range of development types across a range of geographies in the city. It's also important to point out that wherever possible, this was really across the board, taking a very conservative approach to looking at feasibility. In making assumptions, the lower end of the range was used in estimating potential revenues, and the higher end of the range was used in estimating potential costs of development. So even under this conservative approach, the study did suggest that the vast majority of development in the city could afford a higher level of fee than is currently being proposed. There have also been studies as well, in addition to the feasibility study that was provided for us specific to Los Angeles development types. Our team looked at studies of similar fees around the country, around Southern California and around the country, looking at the impact of fees or in lieu inclusionary linkage fees or inclusionary housing fees on housing supply and creation of housing supply. And a study that was spearheaded by the UCLA urban planning faculty looked at 17 Southern California cities and the impacts over a 35-year period, and essentially found no significant impact on housing supply as a result of their study, which was released in 2010. And we've also looked as well at other cities, San Francisco, Boston, Pasadena, that have had similar fees, and did the imposition of a new housing fee result in a chilling effect on the development of new housing? And the answer in each of those cases was no, that in fact the annual average multifamily production in all of those cities was higher after the imposition of the new policy than before. So if you have further questions specifically on the Nexus methodology, we do have our consultants here as well.
Thank you. Okay, Mr. Englander.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. On the economic feasibility study, did you also include all the current, not only proposed fee or current fees on housing, but also some of those that are escalating, like Quimby and others that are set to escalate?
Yes, we did include the new fees that were either adopted or proposed at the time the study was completed. So the Quimby fee was baked into the methodology. In addition, in the West Side communities, there's a new proposed fee, the West Side mobility specific plans, and fees that are proposed for increase there. And the study, as it related to West Side communities, did include those increases.
You said at the time the study was conducted, were there other fees that were pending?
Not that I know of. I don't know if, no, I'm getting no's from the staff. Those are the only. I think Quimby and the West Side Mobility.
And
are
you
the
said
only ones
you did the analysis compared to San Francisco, Pasadena, Santa Monica, and West Hollywood. On those, do you know what the total cost per door in development for residential is in those jurisdictions with all of their costs and fees compared to ours? And do you know what our current level is today?
I don't have all those numbers for each of those cities at my fingertips here, but we can probably reference that and get back to you.
If you can revisit it during this meeting,
sure,
that would be great, because that's what we're comparing it to, is not just, I think, one fee, but all in. What are all the fees that we're charging? And I think it'll probably lead a discussion into the time as well, although I don't know how you quantify the time it takes for approvals. But on the fees itself, what would this bring us to in terms of all-in cost for residential, and then all-in on non-residential? And then how does that compare all in for all costs and fees on those other comparative cities? One other question on the, you said that this could potentially be a revenue stream of up to anywhere, I think the range was from $95 million to $116 million a year, although I don't believe that's what's being contemplated before us. Do you have a breakdown of how much of that would be part of the proposed fee of what you're suggesting at $12 for 6 or more units of residential, $1 for residential 5 or less, and the $5 square foot non-residential? Do you have a breakdown of where?
A breakdown of residential versus non-residential?
In terms of,
how much
of total revenue?
The majority of that revenue is coming from the residential side.
Well, I'm talking about in terms of actual, you said you gave a range from 95 million to 116 million. Is that what's actually being proposed in terms of?
That's an assumption. That is based on the $5 and $12 per square foot amounts that are proposed. The range is due to what assumptions you're making in terms of what level of development we're going to continue to have.
Right.
So the 95 is the most conservative, looking at the last 3 development cycles going back to 1987. This is the average. If we assume that average amount, assuming the downturn in 2008 and so forth, you end up with the 95 million if development continues at that rate.
Right.
If you're at the higher end, we're in a more robust period currently, the last 5 years. Looking at the last 5 years, the assumption is it would generate 116 million.
Okay, and then quickly, what was the, appreciate that, what was the total amount that was actually approved in the budget, and for what part of the fiscal year?
Let's see. We have the, maybe the, yeah, we'll need to research that. I believe it was not a full year. I believe it was a partial year that was included in the budget.
6 months.
I believe so.
6
but
months of
we'll have
revenue.
to- yeah.
And then what was that total dollar amount?
Yeah, we'll need to check that and come back to.
So okay, when you do come back, that would be great.
10 million for the fiscal year.
10
So
million
it's just a fraction of what will ultimately be generated.
Or what could be, depending on what
What we
policies
could-
pass.
correct.
I'm not sure that it was 10 million based on, that's what's really before us, is looking at what was in the budget at this point. I mean, it's all open, but, so this year, going into the next fiscal budget for 17-18, it was $10 million.
And one of the reasons, I'm just being told, one of the reasons, projects, it's assuming that many of the projects are already in the pipeline and therefore would not be subject to the fee this year.
But this is assuming only 6 months of funding anyway, so it wouldn't necessarily be in the pipeline. So all projects that are vested would be exempt from the new fee if they're already vested?
Correct, and then we also did propose correct, and then the 6 month phase in as well. So it won't take effect for another 6 months, even if it were to become
So things in the
effective
pipeline wouldn't be affected anyway, and it's a 6 month phase, so it would start looking at 6 months into the fiscal year. So really only new projects at that point anyway. So at 10 million, it's really contemplated to be roughly 20 million or so a year. Is that correct?
Well, the ultimate amount is much higher, but again, for this year, it was a very conservative assumption based on the phase-in as well as the consideration of the pipeline.
Yeah, okay. We're going to have to, if you could come back with the numbers, because the numbers aren't adding up. So I'm trying to calculate how the budget was based on those. Okay, that'd be great. Okay, thanks.
Mr. Price?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and appreciate the study and hard work that's gone into this, and comments from stakeholders. But just a general question, I guess. The Nexus study divided the city into 3 markets: low, medium, and high. And at the same time, determined that projects in the low market areas could not afford any fee. I'm assuming the low is South LA and some underserved areas. So how do we come up with a one-size-fits-all?
Okay, no, great question. Thank you, Council Member. I think the intent originally in doing the study based on market areas, I think the department's initial inclination was perhaps to recommend a fee that would be distinct in each market area or by geography. However, upon further analysis, that was not the department's recommendation, really for several reasons. One was that although we were recommending a consistent fee across the city, the study also found that, and based on how the ordinance is being crafted with exemptions, that the majority of development that is occurring in low market areas would in fact be exempt from the fee based on how the ordinance has been crafted, in particular the exemption for smaller projects, smaller commercial projects and smaller multifamily projects. So more than half of the development that occurred in low market areas between 2011 and 15 actually would still be exempt from the fee in those areas. The recommendation that the department made, though, was not to vary it based on the market areas as we had perhaps initially been intending to do. First, the department heard loud and clear in outreach that we did, and particularly from the development community, the desire to have simplicity and clarity for this fee, that there needs to be certainty and predictability in making development decisions. And inherently, if it's a fee structure that relies upon geographic variation, markets change significantly over time, and we've seen this occur even in the last few years, where some market areas that were very depressed have been among the most intense in terms of recent development proposals. So this is something that needs to be revisited periodically, and if a fee is based on that, that could result in very sudden changes to a development project's cost in a way that undermines that principle of certainty and clarity for the development community. And then there are also practical difficulties in trying to craft a fee that varies across the city or across development types. First of all, the data that was used in the Nexus study to do this analysis, much of that data is proprietary and may no longer exist in the future. And so there are difficulties in trying to use that to update the fee regularly. More readily accessible data, such as census data, American Community Survey data, don't necessarily reflect current information on rents or sales prices. And many of the low market area, what we call low market areas of the city, are not necessarily the areas you would expect. There are areas such as, including higher income areas in the San Fernando Valley, that are just not seeing a large number of new development projects. So trying to come up with a scheme to do this is very challenging. If you look at enterprise zones as an example, that includes some of the most robust areas of the city, including downtown, areas that you would want to be capturing those impacts of new development on affordable housing. Or trying to do it on council districts is problematic as well, because we're coming up against redistricting in a few years that will re-scramble the picture for the development community once again. So in coming back to all that, we ultimately settled on having a much lower overall fee, having it be consistent, and having exemptions that got us away from one-size-fits-all, that took into account some of these other policy considerations, and creating a balanced ordinance in that, through those mechanisms.
Well, we certainly want to provide some certainty and predictability for developers, but we also want to make sure that the community is not disadvantaged with those considerations. And so I'm just anxious to hear more comment as we continue to deliberate. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you very much. Any more questions? We will take up more questions with our staff after public comment, if that's okay. Okay, thank you. And so at this time, we'll go to public comment. All public comment individuals who have signed up for public comment have a minute to speak. I will call up 3 people at a time. If you could just line up here, and we'll try to get through this as quickly as possible. I think this is going to record for us in terms of the number of cards we have, so it's quite a bit here. Order your dinner.
We have committee at 6.
Oh, wow, okay. So thank you. With that, let me start off with Gary Blazier, Suzette Shaw, and is it Patricia Kramer or with LA Voice? Welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and
Thank you.
members.
Welcome.
My name is Gary Blasey. I'm a professor of law emeritus from UCLA. I've worked on homeless and housing issues in this city for 40 years. This is by far the worst it's ever been. I'm not telling you anything you don't know. I rise in opposition to this motion as it's presently structured solely because the fee on commercial development, I think, is unsupportably low. It was chosen based upon what was a feasible fee in the medium and high markets for warehouses. Warehouses consist of only about 25% of construction, but the beneficiaries of that low fee would be all across the city, including some of the biggest office developments that's ever been contemplated. So I think and I do support the approval of this, but I do think the fee should be commensurate with the problem. This isn't time for just business as usual. We have the worst crisis in America with housing and the worst we've ever had here, and it's time for really dramatic leadership. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I'm a sister of St. Joseph of Carondelet and a parishioner at Dolores Mission. Here we are in Los Angeles, and the skyline has towers of granite and glass, and the streets are full of tents. This is a wealthy city, and the situation is really embarrassing. I reflect on the humility of God who lives in each one of us, no matter whether we're Bill Gates or Lazarus at the door. Each person has dignity, and with that comes rights to food, medical care, and housing. Pope Francis said recently that we have to recognize in ourselves that we value others not as brothers and sisters, but as unworthy, as rivals, as people whose will we can bend to our own.
Thank you.
Are we really neighbors to the other?
Thank you, ma'am. Your time is up.
Pardon me?
Your time is up. Thank you. It's a minute per speaker.
Time is up.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Great. Thank you.
But there's a lot more to say, and I know that the people sitting here are going to say it.
Okay. Thank you. Our next three speakers after this speaker is Pastor Calvin Sauls, Ray Fukuda Salinas, and Pastor Q. Welcome.
Good day, Council. Suzette Shaw, Skid Row resident as well as advocate. I just want to put out that I know there's lots of talks in regards to fees for housing. I just want to make sure that when we are setting aside fees for developers coming into communities such as Skid Row, that we're not making allocations to bring zillionaire developers into our community, making them more the rite of passage than the needs of the people. So I just want to ensure that as we're developing fees, as we're thinking in terms of affordable housing, that affordable housing is actually the issue rather than the need of bringing in zillionaire developers and giving them a rite of passage into the areas where people need affordable housing. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Reverend Calvin Sauls, Senior Pastor at Home United Methodist Church, a church in South Los Angeles, and a proud partner with LA Voice. We just want to let you know there are several of our members who could not get in this afternoon, and we're disturbed about that, but we press on. I rise in full support of the Linkage Fee Ordinance. The inadequacy of affordable and quality housing in Los Angeles is a matter of urgency. In the last two election cycles, Angelenos have shown their dedication to heeding the moral and prophetic call to share their bounty with the least of these by taxing ourselves to help bring an end to the crisis of homelessness. Given the diverse root causes and depth of solutions needed, this is not enough. Now is the time for the City Council through the Plum Committee to provide ongoing courageous leadership by passing the Linkage Fee Ordinance. Moreover, we call on the development community to join Angelenos by doing their part in heeding the call to share their unlimited bounty. Passing the Linkage Fee Ordinance will complement current resources up to $100 million to diversify and multiply the supply of quality and affordable housing.
Thank you very much.
So we support the ordinance. Thank you.
Thank you. There is, for those of you who need translation services, there's some audio phones up here in Spanish. Para las personas que necesitan audiofonos para que le digan esto en español, aquí hay audiofonos acá arriba a mi izquierda, a su derecha, si necesitan traducción. Gracias. Welcome.
Good afternoon, City Council members. My name is Ray Fukuda, and I'm here representing the Little Tokyo Service Center. We are a 37-year-old community development group based in Little Tokyo. We provide affordable housing and social services to families and low-income seniors. We recently completed a senior housing development in Koreatown, Durey Senior Apartments, and in just 1 week, we received over 2,000 applications for these apartments. This is, not uncommon for affordable housing developments, and there's a clear need for more, and the barrier is that we don't have enough funding. So, as many have already stated, we're ready to build more housing, more affordable housing for seniors and families in the city of LA. So we urge that, the city council members here support a linkage fee of $15 per square foot at least or more that would provide sufficient funds for sufficient housing that's needed in the city of LA. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Pastor Q, Daria Nunez, Joan Ling, and Juanita Bonilla.
Pastor Q, the Church Without Walls, and here representing CLU, LA. In 2015, the community declared a state of emergency on homelessness. We have done a moral impact study. The city of Los Angeles have failed. We know by experience what happens if we don't deal with the housing crisis. We cannot continue to treat a homeless crisis as if it is a crime epidemic. In dealing with homelessness, law enforcement is not an option. We cannot continue to pour money into criminalization. When dealing with homelessness, extermination of the homeless is not an option. We reject any policy that leads to homeless cleansing. Any policy that deals with homeless cleansing. Instead, we want policies that deal with homeless housing. And so we declare today that pass the housing fee, pass the fee, pass the linkage fee, and we need to do more than that. Thank you.
Thank you. Daria Nunez. Daria Nunez here? ¿Está aquí? Okay, aquí les voy a separar su carta para que si entran. If Daria Nunez is here in the waiting room, if you come in, it's your turn to speak. Joan Ling. Hi. Juanita Bonilla. Welcome.
Thank you. Joan Ling, lecturer at UCLA Urban Planning. I'm here today representing several of my senior colleagues to urge you to support the linkage fee. The fee will not hurt market rate housing production. The fee will support a meaningful amount of affordable housing production each year, and the fee will encourage developers to take advantage of other land use incentives like density bonus and the transit-oriented communities. Vote for the ordinance. Listen to my senior colleagues, Professor Raphael Bostic, USC, who is going to Atlanta to take up the president of the Federal Reserve Bank there. One seat away from Janet Yellen, Professor Vineet Mukhija, Chair, UCLA Urban Planning Department, Professor Victoria Basolo, UC Irvine Associate Dean, Professor Manuel Pastor, USC, Professor Michael Lenz, UCLA. Thank you.
Thank you. Juanita Bonilla, Christine Ueda, Georgette Sharp. Welcome.
Buenas tardes. Mi nombre es...
Un momento, ¿usted habla español?
Ajá.
Mr. Mejia, can you translate, please? There's a translator? Okay, there you are. Sorry about that. Go ahead.
Buenas tardes. Mi nombre es Juana Bonilla.
Good afternoon. My name is Juana Bonilla.
Bonilla. Vivo en Boyle Heights. Tengo 23 años viviendo ahí.
I have lived in Boyle Heights for 23 years.
Yo vengo a pedirles que por favor apoyen una proposición para ayudar a viviendas de bajos recursos. Tengo una familia de 6.
I'm a member of a family of 6, and I'm here to help request that you help support families of low-income housing.
Mi familia es de 6. Tengo 2 hijas que estudian en el Colegio del Este de Los Ángeles. Un niño que estudia en el grado 9 y un niño chico de 3 que va en el grado 3. Vivo en una casa de un cuarto, así es que muchas veces es muy trabajoso porque ellos necesitan estudiar y necesitan espacio. Mi esposo necesita descansar.
I have two children, one in third grade, one in ninth grade. We live in a one-bedroom apartment, and sometimes it's very difficult for them to get to study because it is a small apartment.
Mi esposo gana $2,000 al mes y las rentas están muy caras. La más barata va siendo como de 1,500 a 2,000, así es que nos quedaría muy poco dinero para cubrir nuestros gastos. Por eso no puedo cambiarme a una casa más grande.
My husband earns $2,000 a month, and our rent is $1,500 a month, so it is very difficult for us to find a bigger home that accommodates our family.
Por eso les pido que apoyen a las personas, a los que den más ayuda para casas de bajos recursos, ayudas más fuertes. Gracias.
And that's why I'm here to ask that you help people from low-income housing. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Christine Ueda. I'm a member of ACE, and for over 60 years I live in and own a home in the area of the West Adams Neighborhood Council. Although I'm a homeowner, I believe in and support affordable housing for all. I spoke with a developer interested in a 3-unit apartment complex with intentions to demo the buildings and build luxury condos. He asked if the owner next door will be willing to sell. I advised him that the owner plans to add a second story to accommodate his family's needs. Charging developers a linkage fee of only $2 per square foot encourages developers to buy more rental properties and force low-income families to go homeless. San Francisco proposes a more reasonable linkage fee of over $20. I have cards here that is just a fraction of what the support that we have for this measure.
Thank you.
Thank you
give
so
this
much.
to the clerk, please. Thank you. Georgette Sharp, Marcy Boswell, Georgina Serrano, and Justin Manuel. Welcome.
Hi, my name is Georgette Sharp, and I'm a member of ACE and a cancer survivor. I'm on a fixed income of $10.95 per month. I live in a room with a toilet and a sink that is infested with bed bugs and cockroaches, with a community kitchen. I have a BS degree in economics, an MBA in marketing, and a graduate project management certificate. No one wanted to hire a cancer survivor. Section 8 is 5 to 10 years long, and I could not get on the list. New construction is for healthy and the affluent. I can't pay the market rate. A linkage fee of $25 for affordable housing can help more people like me.
Thank you. Hello.
Good afternoon. Thank you for having me here. It's an honor to be in front of you and say I'm support Proposition JAA HHA as a volunteer. And I'm here and fully support all linkage fee because it's time for the developers to put a contribution in our progress. You say we don't have a beautiful city with trash, remember the other day? So now how can we grow economically with families together, 2 or 3 families in one bedroom because cannot afford a rent for every affordable housing? So immigrant families are not able to access affordable housing in some cases for the immigrant situation. So really we want to work together with the developers and have a beautiful new city with new buildings, but taking in consideration who is supporting the economy. We, the working class, please approve, and I my fully support for the Lincoln fee. Thank you.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Marcy Boswell, and I'm a member of ACE, and I live in the West Adams community. And in my area, what's going on, there's a lot of foreclosures. Some of them are a little iffy because the bank are using unscrupulous means in my opinion, to foreclose on large properties, and developers are buying these properties, and it's having a large impact on the community. And the city council really should look into it, because what's happening is the long-term residents are being displaced and through artificial rent. So they come in, they buy up a foreclosure property, they fix it up. The rent goes from $700 a month up into $1,200, $1,300 a month. That's bringing in neighbors or different people, demographics to the neighborhood. And if the city council doesn't pay attention, then you guys' seats may be up for grabs in a couple of years, because it's going to be a different demographic. And also, there's a lot of corporate landlords, like, my time's up?
Time is up, yes, sorry. Thank you.
Thank you.
Reverend Oliver Buell, Tim Sewell, and Tunua Thrash. Okay, Reverend Oliver Buell. Bewley. Welcome.
Hi. Good afternoon, council members. I'm Tunua Thrash Intook, the executive director of the Local Initiative Support Corporation, an economic development firm that is committed to bringing capital for communities around affordable housing and ensuring that there are small businesses. I've been a developer in the South LA community for more than 15 years. A linkage fee will not stop development in South LA. And we have an opportunity right now to invest in projects that support the affordability for teachers, public employees, social workers, service sector managers, in short, everyday working people. This would include rental housing, and my dream would be to include home ownership as an opportunity for working families. We believe that actually this may be a chance to spur development in those areas that currently are of low opportunity with this particular linkage fee. We are already making huge public investments in low market communities with transit and other public infrastructure. Let's not cut off the opportunity to make linkage fee dollars available to help us create the communities we want. Thank you.
Thank you. Enrique Velasquez, Ray Fukuda, Salinas spoke already, I believe. We'll check on that. Elsa Tooney, welcome. You go. You're up right now.
I'm Tim Sewell with Meta Housing
Yes.
Corporation. Meta operates throughout the city of Los Angeles, from Chinatown to Winnetka, Panorama City to San Pedro. We develop multifamily, affordable housing, market rate housing, and mixed-use developments. We are in support of the linkage fee. We think it's reasonably sized and will certainly not serve as a deterrent in any of the commercial or residential development in which Meta engages. Furthermore, the linkage fee will provide a permanent source of funding that will allow developers such as Meta to better leverage other sources of financing from the county and the state. They want to see the city have a stake in the game, and it will give us a competitive advantage on other municipalities that may not have dedicated funds for the development of housing. Appreciate your support of this important initiative in the linkage fee, and I hope you'll vote to support it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Enrique Velasquez with Inquilinos Unidos. We are in support of the linkage fee before your consideration today. For decades, Inquilinos Unidos has been working with low-income families, especially with families that live in rent control units. We all know that as we speak, rent control units are disappearing. They're not coming back into the market. I think the city, all of us here in this room, have an opportunity to start tackling in an effective way the loss of affordable housing by passing the linkage fee. In our office, on a daily basis, families come crying, saying they've been living in their units for years, and all of a sudden developers come and they tell them they need to move out. Families complain, and in many occasions what they say is we cannot find a place that we can afford what we own. Please pass the linkage fee. Thank you.
Good afternoon, council members. Elsa Tung, Los Angeles Neighborhood Land Trust. The Land Trust creates, organizes, and advocates for urban parks and gardens in LA's low-income communities of color. As Chairman Huizar and this committee knows, the Land Trust led the Parks for All campaign to overhaul the Quimby Park Fee Ordinance, which City Council adopted unanimously last September. During that campaign, we collaborated with affordable housing partners on the serious need to fund both parks and affordable housing. Both housing and parks are critical infrastructure and major determinants of our community's life expectancy, and both are woefully underfunded. The Land Trust is here today to stand in solidarity with the affordable housing and homelessness prevention community to support a strong linkage fee ordinance. Many California cities, including Pasadena, San Diego, Sacramento, and San Francisco, have impact fees for both affordable housing and parks to the great benefit of their residents. The LA Neighborhood Land Trust urges the Plum Committee to adopt a strong linkage fee ordinance to create a healthier, more affordable, and more equitable city. Thank you.
Rabbi Jonathan Klein, Jacqueline Wagoner, Heather Kriska. Welcome.
Sorry, I was outside. Rabbi Jonathan Klein with Clue. As you might guess, we're supportive of this linkage fee. We believe it's time for the city to seriously address the struggle of so many people who are on the margins, who are so close to going under, and those who are, just trying to make it through on a daily basis. As Clue, as a worker justice, economic justice organization, I don't think you're surprised to hear the position that we have, but we're very excited to share this position with so many people who believe it's time to make a real impact on the situation now, finally. We would like to see the amount per square foot be as high as possible, recognizing that we need more resources and we have one opportunity is what it feels like right now. And let's seize this moment. Let's bring in revenues that can make sure that this city is the city of angels that it's supposed to be. Thank you.
Good afternoon, council members. You should be excited. You have some real solutions here with the linkage fee. As you know, the homeless count is up 20%, and we need to do a better job of making strides to address the main causes of homelessness. We know that many Angelenos can't afford to find a safe place to live, and frankly, we need resources like the linkage fee. Los Angeles strives to be a leader in this area, but sadly, we are behind already. As you heard from our leadership of the city, other major cities have found the solution. They're doing inclusionary housing. They're doing a linkage fee. And when private developers were asked in those cities to contribute, they're still building and including inclusionary housing. And despite the fears that were expressed here today of the potential negative impacts of housing, these programs have not disrupted housing markets across the country. In fact, those markets continue to strive. While not the only solution for affordable housing is the linkage fee, please vote yes and help house our most vulnerable Angelenos. Thank you.
Thank you. 1 second. Heather Kriska, Becky Dennison, Eric Ares, and Sun Hee Choi. Welcome.
Good afternoon. My name is Heather Kriska, and I'm with the Natural Resources Defense Council. We're here supporting a strong linkage fee because we believe that investing in affordable housing is essential to sustainable urban planning. Sustainability is not just about reducing pollution, it's also about creating equitable communities. Sustainable planning involves ensuring that we provide access to housing, parks, public transit, walkable and bikeable streets, and healthy food options to all Angelenos. LA's housing crisis is well known and well documented. Low-income residents and families are rapidly being displaced, deepening inequality and decreasing low-income residents' ability to access amenities like public transportation. The city should raise the linkage fee to at least $15 per square foot for multifamily rental units and $7 per square foot for commercial. The city's linkage fee study found that there isn't nearly enough affordable housing to accommodate the number of low-income workers. These fee increases would raise substantially more money to fund affordable housing while still remaining well under the level the city found feasible. Thank you.
Thank you. Becky Dennison, Eric Ares, Sun Hee Choi. Welcome.
Thank
Thank you. Good afternoon. I'm Becky Dennison with Venice Community Housing. We're here in strong support of the linkage fee, but also agree it needs to be increased from the current amount and be as close to the allowable amount in the Nexus study as possible. We are not producing nearly enough affordable housing as seen by every measure, as you've heard, and we can't continue to hear from market rate developers that production alone will fix that problem. It hasn't done that for 10 years. It is time for them to directly invest in affordable housing through these fees, not just promise that increasing supply will help us. It's not helping low-income people. It's definitely not helping homeless folks. The current version of the fee is just too low to be meaningful, and now is the time with the federal cuts for our cities and states to stand up and say we won't allow these cuts to devastate our communities even further. And so we're talking about only replacing to the level we had 7 or 8 years ago. We need to go even higher, and then we need to do more based on what we're seeing on the federal level. Our communities are depending on you. Every single community can manage this fee because of the way markets change so quickly. It should be citywide, it should be fast, it should be more.
Welcome.
Good afternoon, council members. My name is Eric Adas. I'm with the Los Angeles Community Action Network here, saying that we are very much in support of passing the linkage fee. I just want to talk about the political will that's necessary. We know it's about feasibility. We want to make it work for all of LA. We don't want to discourage development, but this is about political will, right? This is about when we want to pass this and the market's hot, they say don't stop the train. When the recession happens and the train stops, we say we got to get the train going again. If we're ever going to do this, we really got to do it now. I know it takes bold leadership. I know we got to get the feasibility studies and make it happen, but this is our moment. Right? And you're going to hear a lot of opposition about feasibility, about one size fits all. There's a lot of arguments to be made. But what it comes down to is bold leadership, and we're standing alongside you to figure out something that works, but it has to be a minimum of $15. It has to be something that is aggressive and bold, and it is an opportunity that will not come again. And we cannot wait another decade for a crisis that's already destroying our city to continue to make it unlivable for the majority of individuals. So really, really encourage you all to take the bold leadership necessary to make this happen on behalf of the majority of LA.
Thank you. Sun Hee Choi, Juana Bonilla, Sergio Juarez, Rosa Bonilla.
I'll be translating for Sunny Choi.
Okay.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Sunny Choi. 저는 코리아타운에 살고 있는데요. 시니어 아파트가 너무나 부족해갖고 많은 한인들이 고통을 받고 있습니다.
So my name is Sunny Choi, and I'm a resident of Koreatown. We have very little low-income or senior housing, and there are a lot of residents who are feeling a lot of pain because of that.
저도 지금 9년 전에 어플리케이션을 냈는데도 여태까지도 소식이 없어갖고 렌트비는 점점 인상돼갖고 앞으로는 지금 더 이상 생활하기가 곤란합니다.
9 years ago, ever since 9 years ago, I've been applying to senior apartments, and I still haven't been able to get anything. And so the rents continue to rise, and because of that, it is making it very difficult for me to live.
저희 민족학교에서 이런 분들을 저희가 자원봉사자로 일하는데요. 너무 많은 그 사람들이 고통을 받고 있어갖고 좀 앞으로는 더 생활이 어려워질 것 같아갖고 굉장히 좀 난감해요.
I work at the Korean Research Center as a housing volunteer, and we help a lot of seniors who go through the very same thing. And it shows that this lack of housing issue is rampant, and it is worrying because it's only getting worse. And so I'm worried about all the seniors that will end up not being able to find housing.
예, 그래갖고 좀 앞으로 더 인상된다면은 이제 단독으로 못 살고 이 키친이나 베드룸을 같이 공동으로 사용해야 돼갖고 더 불편해질 것 같습니다.
There are a lot of seniors that end up sharing homes, they share kitchens, they live in very uncomfortable situations because they can't afford to pay for rent on their own.
보조비. 그래서 저희 링키지 피를 좀 올려주셔갖고 좀 많은 분들이 지금 이게 생활을 좀 안정되게 했으면 좋겠습니다.
And so we'd like for a strong linkage fee to be able to be approved on so that we can make sure that people can continue to live but also live comfortably. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Juana Bonilla, Sergio Juarez, Rosa Bonilla.
Rosa Bonilla, Juanita ya pasó.
Okay.
Bueno, como dijo, mi nombre es Rosa Bonilla. Trabajo para la parroquia, la Iglesia de Misión Dolores, muchos conocen.
My name is Rosa Maria, and I work for the Misión Dolores Church.
Yo trabajo con la comunidad. Tenemos un pequeño fondo con el que yo trabajo y este fondo es menos de $5,000 para todo el año.
We have a small fund of about $5,000 that's available for the whole year.
Para ayudar a las personas con un poquito para pagar sus rentas.
This fund is used to help people who cannot afford to pay their rent.
Y también para funerales.
And for funerals.
Así que como pueden imaginarse, en menos de 6 meses este fondo se termina.
As you can imagine, this fund is usually used up within 6 months.
Es muy triste para mí y cada vez que hablo sobre esto, it's really hard for me, and sometimes when I start to speak about this, I cry. I just cry. Because it's really hard to hear the families crying because they don't have enough money to pay for their rent. My family and I had to live for 3 years in just one bedroom. It's really hard when I think in this. It's really hard when I have to tell people I don't have more money to help you with your rent. It's really hard to see how sad you have to see their face. That is why I am here now and asking you, please help us to have more help for these people to have their apartment, affordable housing for them. Please, we need a linkage fee.
Okay.
Grande, big for them.
Sergio Juarez, Stuart Waldman, Diane Valencia, Sofanarot Sam.
Buenas tardes.
Buenas tardes.
Buenas tardes.
¿Necesita traducción?
Necesito traducción.
Sí.
Muchas gracias. Buenas tardes. Soy Sergio Juárez, es un gusto conocerlos. Tengo 2 meses de haber vivido una situación muy fuerte para mí, para mi familia. Nos llegó una carta a la casa y nos dijeron, desalojen la vivienda, les damos 3 meses, pero tienen que pagar la renta. Así lo hicimos, nos costó mucho trabajo conseguir una vivienda, pero al final de cuentas yo gano $25,000 al año y voy a pagar $20,000 de renta al año. No sé qué hacer.
I've had a really bad situation happen to me recently where I received a letter that I had to move out of my housing, but I still had to pay rent on it. I'm not earning a lot of money, but I had to use most of that for housing.
Sí. Vengo a hablar por mi familia, por los que no tienen, por los que tienen también, y me llevo un recuerdo de que vine a ser un luchador social frente a ustedes también. Muchas gracias.
And I'm here to speak on for those who have some and for those who don't have a lot, but I thank you and I hope you pass this fee.
Hi, Stuart Waldman, President of the Valley Industry and Commerce Association, VICA, representing the business community in the San Fernando Valley. We need more housing. We need more market rate housing. We need more affordable housing. And this measure will not bring that to us. This measure, on a good day, in a perfect world, will bring 400 units a year. That's it. That will not solve the housing problem. You need to look at, when you raise prices, you're raising prices on market rate housing. You need to look at what's happening for people who are building market rate housing, affordable housing. We have JJJ. You guys are now talking about value added, just continual increased costs. Just labor costs are going up. Material costs are going up. Land costs are going up. Neighborhood council costs are going up. This will not solve our problem.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. Diane Valencia had a family emergency and asked if I could read
Who?
her statement. Diane Valencia.
Yeah, we do not do that, sir. It's these committee rules that we do not allow others to read statements if those people are not here. Otherwise, we'd have people sending in statements all the time, so we don't allow that. So,
Okay,
what's your
and
name? You can
can
sign
I,
up.
Osceola Sankara. Can I submit this?
Yeah, you could submit that. Yes, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. So that was on behalf of Diane Valencia? Okay. Thank you very much. And so for Narot, Sam, not here? Okay. Sissy Trin, Laura Raymond, Emily Martinez or Martignac. Welcome.
Good afternoon, council members. My name is Sissy Trin. I'm the executive director of SICA, the Southeast Asian Community Alliance. My family came to LA and we moved into the crappiest apartment in the best school district possible so that me and my brother could have a decent education and go off to college. And despite those credentials, and despite the fact that I have a living wage job, I can't afford market rate housing. And in fact, according to the UCLA Urban Displacement Project, it would take 32 years for me, with my living wage job, to be able to afford market rate housing in the city of LA. But I'm one of the lucky ones. I do community organizing in Chinatown and Lincoln Heights, and I have youth coming to me on a regular basis asking for help, looking for a job. These are kids who should be focusing on deciding which colleges to go to, but instead they're focusing on whether or not to go to college at all because of the fear that if they don't start earning money and helping for rent, that their families are going to get evicted and become homeless. These are families that are one rent increase away from being homeless. And so the linkage fee is infinitely fair, and I would say even generous. We can afford more.
Thank you. Welcome.
Good afternoon, council members. My name is Laura Raymond. I'm the campaign director with ACT LA. We're a coalition of 34 housing and transit rights groups throughout the city. LA is rare among major cities and lacking either a permanent source of affordable housing funding or an inclusionary housing policy. FM3 Research conducted a phone survey of 1,500 voters in 5 Southern California communities, including South LA and East LA, in April of this year. 87% of all respondents supported creating a dedicated fund for construction of housing for very low-income families. Establishing a linkage fee has a unified support of constituents in LA that we rarely see around any issue. So I join with other colleagues here today in urging a meaningful fee of at least $15 a square foot. The Nexus study supports higher fees, so the draft ordinance is not going far enough for us. Coupled with exemptions, we're concerned about leaving critical funding on the table as we face cuts to funding on the national level. Now is the time we need to move forward on this. We need bold action. Thank you.
Thank you. Emily, Robin Hughes, Father Michael Lee, Mike Alvidrez. Welcome.
Good afternoon. My name is Emily Martinick. I am 59 years old. I am 65 years old, and when I became homeless, I was 59. I'm an entrepreneur, and I am also an advocate for CSH, Corporation for Public Housing. We must end this homelessness. If we can only support 400 homes every single year, then that's all we can do. But we must do something. People cannot go on like this any longer. Seniors cannot go on like this any longer. It was a traumatic experience being homeless. I managed to recover, and I am now a proud advocate, and I will not stop until this solution is ended. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, council members. My name is Robin Hughes, and I'm president of Abode Communities. We are a nonprofit affordable developer. We've been developing in the city of Los Angeles for over 3 decades. And I don't have to tell you that our affordable housing crisis has hit its peak. We see the impact of the shortage of affordable housing on the lives of families and seniors firsthand. When we open a new affordable housing development, we get to provide quality affordable housing to 1 out of 25 people. And those 25 families we have to turn away, and they have to return to their overcrowded housing conditions, in some cases unsheltered, in some cases on the verge of homelessness. In our 20 developments here in the city of Los Angeles, we have waiting lists of over hundreds of people, and those people have to stay on that waiting list upwards of 3 years before they get to the top of the waiting list, and we're able to provide high-quality affordable housing to them. As we continue to see this housing shortage come, we're also seeing reduction in affordable housing. It's really critical that we pass the linkage fee in this city. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Father Michael Lee, Mike Alvidrez, Steve Ducier, Brandy Orton, and Felipe Orozco. Welcome.
Good afternoon, council members. On behalf of Loyola, on behalf of LA Voice and Dolores Mission, want to speak in favor of us and in support of a strong and fair linkage fee because it's critical to build housing that hardworking people can afford. We need to help our fellow Americans, residents of this city, secure affordable, stable housing. It's a moral obligation that has political implications, but fundamentally it is a moral obligation. In fact, housing is a human right, according to the United Nations.
Thank you. Mike Alvidrez, not here. Steve, Brandy Orton, and Felipe Orozco. Welcome.
Thank you. My name is Steve Ducey. I'm with the Housing and Homelessness Committee, the Democratic Socialists of America, Los Angeles. This is an important, albeit modest, first step forward in solving the related dual crises of housing and homelessness that are gripping our city. This is modest because this proposal should go much further than it does. We should be in favor of raising commercial fees as high as is feasible and residential fees as high as is feasible to ensure funds are made available to solving these crises. If we are seriously committed to solving these crises, we need a comprehensive solution, of which today's vote is but a small step. I propose the city earmark funds generated through these fees to be used for a fund to educate a strong workforce in HSID. If these funds are earmarked for improving existing affordable housing, there is no better opportunity than to reclaim the RSO units currently being held hostage by our short-term rental abuse system. A robust commercial linkage fee could fund a strong enforcement mechanism to bring RSO units back to the residential market and help fix this problem without relying on developers to have to build a single unit of affordable housing. Thank you.
Thank you. Welcome.
I'm Felipe Orozco. I'm from City 1 Lincoln Heights, New Life Community Church. A lot of the people in my community are comfortable with the fact that you all are deciding on a policy like this after having accepted money from big-time developers for your campaigns and who knows what else. My plea to you is simple, that you would act in our interests, people who don't have big sums of money to offer you, not in the interests of developers.
Good afternoon. Brandy Orton, St. Barnabas Senior Services LA Aging Advocacy Coalition. We operate 3 of the city's senior centers. In our case management program, we are seeing 10 seniors per month who are falling into homelessness because rents are rising outside of their income levels and there's no stock available. We held a conference in January to highlight the need in this. UCLA Center for Health Policy Research estimated that there's 250,000 older adults in the county of Los Angeles living on the edge of homelessness. If you look at income levels and if you look at housing stock and availability alone, these seniors have nowhere to turn, and they're not going to be able to be helped with getting more income because of the income levels that they're at. So we support a strong, meaningful fee.
G. Son, Alexander Russell, Jesus Hernandez. Is it Jason or G-Son? Alexander Russell, you could start if you're ready to go. Thank you.
Good afternoon, members of the Plum Committee. My name is Alexander Russell. I'm the Executive Vice President at Many Mansions. I'm the Vice President of the Board for the Southern California Association of Nonprofit Housing. As many people have said, with the significant cuts in federal funds and state funds, with the drop in tax credit pricing due to uncertainty in the tax credit market, with escalating construction costs, with rising interest rates, with high land prices, it's harder than ever to develop affordable housing in our community. It's only with funding such as this linkage fee that affordable housing development is possible. Many Mansions, like many other organizations here, has thousands of low-income families, people with disabilities, seniors, transition-age youth on our waiting list, and the waiting lists are often several years in length. So we really support this measure, like everyone else, as high as the linkage fee as possible. The $15 for residential and the $7 for commercial is what we support. We thank you for your time. We know it's a long meeting, but we're definitely appreciative of your support. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, council members. My name is Ji Sun, and I'm a tenured professor at California State University, Los Angeles. I want to thank you for your service and listening to all of us here today. I'm here representing Cal State LA Community and also LA Voice, and we want to just support this ordinance, and we want to ask you to consider the $15 and $7 promoted by Mayor Eric Garcetti. 1 out of 10 Cal State students are homeless. These are our students who are going to be the future luxury apartment dwellers. But in order for us to educate them to be such people of the future, we need to make sure that they have stable, affordable housing right now. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Jesus Hernandez, Lori Gay, Claire Wazana Meredith.
Good afternoon, council members. My name is Jesus Hernandez, and I'm with the nonprofit Community Corporation of Santa Monica. As our name implies, we are a Santa Monica-based nonprofit that for the past 35 years has developed, rehabilitated, and brought to market over 1,700 units of affordable housing. We are here in support of the linkage fee. This innovative policy is an important tool to continue to address the lack of affordable housing. Because the lack of affordable housing is a regional problem, Community Corp has begun to look at developing in areas of Los Angeles near Santa Monica. However, we face difficulty developing low-income housing due to limited funding. As housing developers, we require certain tools supported by our public partners to continue to provide affordable housing. The linkage fee is one of the most important tools developers will need to increase the stock of affordable housing. Your support of the linkage fee is a resounding yes in favor of decent and safe homes. Please vote in favor of the linkage fee. Thanks for your time.
An hour later. Lori Gay. Welcome.
Hi, council persons. I'm Lori Gay with Neighborhood Housing Services of LA County. We are the region's largest affordable homeownership provider. Pleasure to be here to support the linkage fee. We just want to note that we're one of the groups that would support it going up to $15 if we can get there. We don't believe it'll impact housing being built. We're 22,000 units under our belt now. And what we found is ways to work the money so that people can achieve home ownership. We believe that the neighborhoods are in crisis. Home matters. So we have to figure it out. And we've got to get with people who help us leverage that. We're still your leverage team, and we'd like to spend time now, post-linkage fee, figuring out ways to make sure more families get into home ownership and stay there. So we appreciate your support.
Thank you. Claire Wazana Meredith, Rabea Sen, Dara Creasy.
Hi, my name is Claire Wazana Meredith. I'm a constituent in Councilmember Weezar's district and a volunteer with Bend the Arc, and I'm here in support of a strong linkage fee. I live in Little Tokyo, steps away from Skid Row and blocks from Boyle Heights, and I'm here on behalf of those neighbors. As someone who grew up with a single mom in a big city, we moved around a lot. However, with family support and her having immigrated early, she was accustomed to the language and culture, and she made it work. I know some of my neighbors aren't so lucky to have those things, and that despite working full-time or more, still struggle to provide a stable home for their families. I know that life as a single mom is hard enough without having to worry that you might not make rent or that your rent could rise unexpectedly and be evicted. No one should have to live with those fears. A strong linkage fee will help bring more affordable homes to hardworking Angelenos. Voters were willing to pitch in and tax themselves in November and May. It's time for developers to do the same. I understand the study found that a linkage fee could go as high as $24 without slowing development. Councilmember Weezar, I hope you'll champion a strong fee at least $15 for residential and $7 for commercial. Thank you.
Thank you. Rabea Sen, Dara Creasy, Marcus Allgood, Rabbi Robin Podolsky. Welcome.
Hi, my name is Rabia Sen with Esperanza Community Housing Corporation, and we work with low-income communities in South Central Los Angeles. We're also a proud member of ACT LA, and we strongly believe that housing is a basic health and human right issue. And we support the passage of a linkage fee at a meaningful rate that would generate at least $100 million a year to increase the stock of affordable housing and reduce homelessness. We are in the midst of a housing crisis in the city. That's not a surprise to anyone. That's not a surprise to us. As an affordable housing provider, we see people on our wait lists for years on end. And in the meanwhile, they're forced into overcrowded slum housing conditions because of rising rents. It is unconscionable that developers get to enter our communities, displace people, and profit by making market rate housing while the very families they've displaced are forced out onto the street. They must do their fair share, and we applaud you and urge you to hold them accountable for this. Thank you.
Thank you. Welcome.
Greetings. My name is Marcus Allgood with Isla LA on 2900 West Slauson. I'm in Marquis Harris Dawson District. I'm here in support of the linkage fee. My perspective is the best way to prevent homelessness is to increase affordable housing. I came here as an implant from Washington, D.C., and we started off in Marina Del Rey, and our rent was $2,100 for a one-bedroom, and it went up to $2,400 for a one-bedroom. So we moved to the Crenshaw area where they were doing all the development with the new construction of the metro and the new construction all around the area, and all the landlords around there start raising their rent. Even in the jungles, they start raising their rent. Our rent went up from $16,000 to $17,000 in that area, so we end up moving from there to 3rd Avenue. Thank you.
Thank you. Dara Creasy?
Yeah. Good afternoon. I'm Rabbi Robin Podolsky, representing Bend the Ark, a Jewish partnership for social justice. Thank you for hearing me. I'm here on behalf of the linkage fee. We've learned that the number of homeless people in our city has risen by 20%, and the number of people living in their cars has increased by 50%. That means people who once could buy cars now have no other homes. Our tradition teaches love, befriend the stranger, for you were strangers in the land of Egypt. It also teaches that the Hebrew people first went down to Egypt as guests until a Pharaoh rose up who did not know Joseph. And we learn from this, people's fortunes can change. Anyone can find themselves a stranger in a strange land. Many people in our city are one paycheck away from absolute disaster. Our people came here to establish a foothold. Please don't let our beautiful city be a privilege for the wealthy.
Thank you. Alan Greenlee? Alan Greenlee, Stephanie Klasky Gamer, Brooke Winschafter, Robin Samuels.
Good afternoon. My name is Alan Greenlee. I'm the Executive Director of the Southern California Association of Nonprofit Housing. On behalf of our 250 members who build affordable housing in the city of Los Angeles, we're here to support the linkage fee. One quick point, I think that hasn't been mentioned today. I know there's some talk about federal dollars, but currently in the federal budget, the HOME program, which is essentially the one source of funding for affordable housing in the city, is zeroed out. And so there is no investment from the federal government coming, and so it's time for us to take care of ourselves. And so on behalf of not only the SCAMP membership, but this incredibly diverse and citywide coalition, I speak in support of the linkage fee. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, council members. My name is Brooke Wirtschafter. I'm here representing Valley Beth Shalom Synagogue in Encino. We are the largest Jewish synagogue in the San Fernando Valley, representing over 2,000 families, with families that live across the valley. We see the need for this linkage fee very strongly in our own community. We have seniors who come to us not able to find housing, not able to live in the area where they raised children and paid taxes for many years. They can't live there anymore. We know this is a moral issue in our community. We see it in the food pantry where we hand out bags of food to the homeless who live all around our area in Lake Balboa, and then even in Encino. There are homeless distributed across our community, and we know that these folks need our help, and this is a moral issue for us, and it's a moral issue even in the valley as much as it is in other parts of the city. We're asking for you to pass the strongest linkage fee that we can get. We think that what's being proposed is not nearly enough and that the need is much greater. So we thank you and we ask you to pass a strong linkage fee.
Welcome.
Thank you. My name is Robin Samuels. I'm here representing Leo Beck Temple. We have a strong history of supporting social justice and a more livable Los Angeles, which is why we're here today with our partners from LA Voice to support a strong linkage fee. We also see the need in members of our own congregation, but also with the families that we partner with from Imagine LA. I personally was mentored to a woman who was transitioning from homelessness. I watched her get training. I watched her find stable schooling situation for her daughter, finally find full-time work, only to be stymied by the impossible task of finding affordable housing. The advice of her caseworker, you should just move out of Los Angeles. I really think we can do better than that, and I trust that you will. Thank you very much.
Stephanie, Martha Cox, Nitik Kaman, Fred Sutton, Jessica Law. Welcome.
Long stack of cards.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Good afternoon. I'm Stephanie Klasky-Gamer with LA Family Housing, a homeless services provider and affordable housing developer based in the San Fernando Valley, but building affordable housing and apartments in all of your districts. I'm proud to be here today with hundreds of strong supporters of the linkage fee. And while many of us were in the overflow room upstairs or outside in the hallway, for those that are able, can you please stand if you are supporting the linkage fee today? There's many of us that are here representing people who aren't able to stand, who aren't able to speak out, and it's critical, and we appreciate you representing their voices as well. Our time is now. Our housing crisis is our homeless crisis. At LA Family Housing alone, we worked with more than 13% more people in 2016 than in 2015, but we only placed 2% more people in that time frame because there wasn't enough housing. So we urge you to do everything you can for the highest fee possible. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Good afternoon. This is Martha Cox Nittigman. I represent over 150 million square feet of office space in Los Angeles. Everyone here today wants more affordable housing. The question is, how are we going to go about doing that? BOMA opposes the proposed housing linkage fee. It places additional costs on projects which will result in construction of fewer houses at a time when the region needs tens of thousands of units per year. While the linkage fee will produce about 70 to 90 new units, this doesn't begin to address the immense need of low and middle income families. Further, other measures have been passed by the city. We feel that you should focus on implementing those measures before layering additional costs. We therefore ask for a no vote and urge a study of other ways to spur affordable housing. Thank you.
Thank you. Jessica Law, Matthew Mitera, David Levitis, and Ann Sewell. Welcome.
Good afternoon. I'm Jessica Law. I represent the Central City Association. We represent 400 businesses that employ over 350,000 people. We are an organization focused on building a more vibrant downtown and increasing investment in the region. And there's no issue more important to our members than building more housing at all income levels. We believe that it speaks directly to our homelessness crisis. It also informs retailers and tells businesses where to locate. We believe, like you, the proposed affordable linkage fee will not solve the housing crisis and must be carefully implemented so it does not discourage housing production and job growth or make housing more expensive. CCA has submitted a letter outlining our recommendations and have shared, I will pick a couple to share with you today. First and foremost, since the fee is a completely new fee, we believe that it should be phased in over a multi-year period of time. Second, the fee should be based on leasable or sellable square footage rather than total building square footage. And finally, we encourage high-rise construction in downtown should continue to be a priority for the city. And to that end, the TFAR ordinance and the proposed linkage fee should complement one another. We ask that the committee continue to deliberate over this policy as these questions are answered. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you. Welcome.
Hello, my name is Matthew Matera. I work for a small solar company, and we do a lot of work in downtown Los Angeles and here in the city and other parts. I think that this fee affects a lot more than what people are talking about here today. I think everybody keeps talking about that it's going to help or fix the homeless criteria. The rent is not free. People still need to pay. The government needs to pay. Also, it affects many other things. AB 1414 is part of the legislative bills that's just been renewed for another 25 years to keep fees low on being able to build and develop houses and to be able to afford some green building acts. The first thing to go when builders are looking to be able to afford to build a building and make sure that they can afford it and eventually turn a profit on that building, they're looking for ways to cut, and green alternative energy is one of the first things that they cut. Please think more about this bill. Angelenos deserve more of the benefit to the entire community and not just of the few. Please oppose the linkage fee.
Thank you. Welcome.
Good afternoon, council members. I'm Ann Sewell, Vice President of the California Community Foundation, here to support the affordable housing linkage fee. Last year, we did something really terrific together. We took action and the voters supported $1.2 billion to address homelessness. And last week, we got the very disappointing news that although we housed 14,000 people across the county, many more fell into homelessness, and there was a 30% increase in family homelessness. Our housing crisis is driving our homeless crisis. So we did something terrific, but as the old saying goes, well begun is half done, and we need to keep going. This proposed fee has been carefully studied. It's been carefully negotiated. It's been carefully designed to exempt projects that would fall under JJJ and projects that provide affordable housing on site. And now it's being carefully criticized by opponents who think that it will stop development. The Community Foundation commissioned a study by Kaiser Marston, which has been sent to your boxes. Bottom line, it won't. So I urge you to do the right thing and continue the good work we started together. Thank you.
Thank you. David, Darren Nutter, Carmen Fuentes, Erica Kent.
Hello. Good afternoon, council members. My name is David Levitis. I'm a founder and executive director of LA Forward, representing several thousand young folks in their 20s, 30s, and 40s across the city, especially in the West Side, South Valley, and Silver Lake part of the city, and representing a new generation that cares deeply both about a livable city, a dense city, a city full of street life, but also one where equity is prioritized. We're part of ACT LA and a Coalition for a Just LA, and we're here to speak in favor of a strong linkage fee. We suggest, like many of the other folks who've spoken to you, that we push higher towards what the report has suggested is feasible economically, and that urge you to adopt a $15 per square foot on residential and $7 per square foot on commercial, so that we can truly ensure that we're producing the amount of affordable housing that we need, that we make up for the tremendous loss in funding that we've seen from other sources. LA is a very wealthy city, and we have it within our means to do this. Thank you.
Thank you.
Darren Nutter, council people, thank you. Mild-mannered citizen. I don't cuss and I don't have any goat impressions for you. I was thinking today that I wouldn't call it a fee, I'd call it a tax. And so the $1 million guess on what they could make in the future, if we tax development and development slows, those numbers are going to dip too. Right, that's it. And all the jobs that go with that are going to suffer as well. We do have a housing problem, affordable housing, absolutely, but why penalize development and growth for that? So I would recommend to think outside the box for affordable housing. Yes, it's an issue, but not at the expense of development. I wouldn't place demands on new growth and development in LA. It's already tough enough for the construction industry. Why not put more energy into the success or refurbishing existing properties like Bixel House on 6th? In summary, I feel that we should support new developments for LA, continued prosperity, and not impose burden like a tax that can be dealt with in another way.
Thank you. Hola.
Buenas tardes.
Buenas tardes.
Me llamo Carmen Fuentes. Vengo de Boyle Heights.
Hi, my name is Carmen Fuentes, and I come from Boyle Heights.
Soy miembro de ILA. Yo apoyo las tarifas porque mis vecinas y familiares ocupan vivienda económica.
And I support the linkage fee because my neighbors and my friends need affordable housing.
Las tarifas van a apoyar a familias que están a punto de ser desalojadas de Boyle Heights.
The linkage fee would help support families that are about to be
Necesitamos más fondos para construir vivienda a niveles más profundos para familias más pobres.
We need more funds to construct more housing and for families that are very poor.
Gracias.
Gracias. Erica Kent, Ryan Frank, Tim Piaski.
Good afternoon, council members. I'm a teacher within the Los Angeles Community College District, and I oppose the linkage fee. The linkage fee negatively impacts lower-income households and the working class with increased rental costs as well as inflated home prices. As a member of the working class, I believe everyone should have access to adequate housing, but the linkage fee is not the way to achieve that. Thank you.
Welcome. Ryan Frank. Ryan Frank.
I'm Ryan Frank. Been a general contractor in the city. Well, my dad's been for 20 years, doing new commercial development. And the opportunity that the new commercial development provides for immigrants and unskilled workers to find a trade and a profession that they can pursue, I've seen it firsthand. I've seen workers that have come in with no skills whatsoever. They've been able to cultivate some skills, whether they've stayed with our company or branched on to other companies. And they've been able to have economic growth themselves. And one thing that the linkage fee will impose is, or it will do, is cause developers not to want to develop anymore. And it's only going to provide 1% of housing for low income. What is that going to do for the other affordable income housing? That's going to raise it. So are we even solving an issue right here, or are we creating another issue in the future? Thanks.
Thank you. Tim Piaski. I think Georgina Serrano. I think we called Georgina Serrano already, but there's another card. Dagan Bayless, Edgar Aguilar. Welcome.
Welcome. Good afternoon, council members. My name is Tim Piaski, CEO of the Building Industry Association. You know, we need to do something about the growing housing affordability crisis, but we need to learn from the cities like Boston, San Francisco, Chicago, where they're saying, hey, we need to follow those as the lead. Well, let's look at what they've really done. If you look back at their progress, they generated 100 or less housing units a year. Not successful at all. I wouldn't look for them to find your success. There are 600,000 approximately units in LA, households making less than $50,000 a year. If you think about how many units actually get positive impact from this fee, it's less than 0.1%. The other 99.9% are more than likely going to pay with higher rents. That's just not fair for them. So we would request that the city forego the linkage fee and instead conduct a similar process that was used to address the homelessness crisis. Thank you.
Welcome.
I'm not sure if I jumped my place in line. My name is Dagan Bayless. I'm with SAGE. And SAGE is an organization based in South LA that advocates for working class communities, communities of color, for economic justice. We seek to create better neighborhoods with the same neighbors. And we applaud the City Council for examining the linkage fee. Specifically, we would like to see a linkage fee that is more precise, that breaks out separate fees depending on the type of construction that will be built, whether it's single-family, condominiums, multifamily residential, office space, retail, or hotels. And I have a letter here that contains our recommendations for each of those different categories of housing. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Edgar Aguilar, Kathy or Kate Head, Meredith Graham, and Dat Fawn. Welcome.
Hello, thank you so much. My name is Edgar Aguilar. I'm here on behalf of the Apartment Association of Greater Los Angeles. And AGLA actually represents mostly operators, not developers. However, we have a unique understanding of the desperate need for supply, as it is our members who help house the city of Los Angeles. According to the Nexus study, the linkage fee will produce $75 to $92 million annually, which, after calculating for cost of development, may provide around 600 units a year. That is not what is needed to get millennials and the next generation to get them going, create conditions where they can migrate here, and it is not what will bring prices down for everyone. There are already early indications that Measure JJJ may have impacted applications for housing units. This linkage proposal will be another counterproductive housing policy if it moves forward. It will increase the cost of construction and will benefit a fraction of the city while making it even harder or virtually impossible for everybody else.
Thank you. Kate Head and Meredith Graham, Dat Fawn. Welcome.
Good afternoon, council members. My name is Kathy Head. I manage the affordable housing practice for Kaiser Marston Associates. We're a financial consulting firm that's helped in the adoption of over 50 linkage fees and inclusionary housing policies throughout the state. We were engaged by the California Community Foundation to take a look at some of the issues that the opposition to the program have raised. You have a letter that has been submitted to you, so I won't go over all the points in it. I just want to make a couple key points. One is, what I did was I gathered building permit data for 10 years before and 10 years following the adoptions of programs like this in Pasadena, West Hollywood, Santa Monica, and San Diego. And what I found from that analysis was there was no discernible pattern in what happened to development. Production went up, production went down before and after the policy was ever adopted. There is no strong argument that this type of policy reduces the production of housing. I think that's really important to say and really important to understand, and the data supports it. The other issue, the other issue is read my memo. It's all in there.
Good afternoon. My name is Meredith Graham. I'm a member of the San Fernando Valley Committee of CLUE. Perhaps you've heard of us. You already know where we stand. As a proud Unitarian Universalist, one of our major principles is the use of the democratic process. The people have already spoken through Measure HHH and H. They're willing to tax themselves to help solve the housing problem. And let's get it done. That's all.
Dot Fan, Christine Rangel, Eleni Christensen, and okay.
Hello, my name is Dat Fan. I'm an attorney at Public Counsel. We're a legal services organization that advocates for affordable housing and equitable development in LA. The city itself has lost millions and millions of dollars of affordable housing funding through the end of redevelopment, as well as a substantial decline in federal funding. As many of my colleagues have discussed, major cities around California, Pasadena, San Francisco, Oakland, have long-standing and vibrant programs that have demonstrated that linkage fee programs work. We want to really emphasize that the Nexus study is very thorough. It provides a very reasonable linkage fee program that would also provide profit sustainably to developers. We wanted to emphasize and really, count on and hope that the council's leadership here will take the steps necessary to establish a vibrant and robust linkage fee program that can really take a big step towards addressing the affordable housing crisis in LA and in the state as a whole. Thanks.
Hi, I'm a civil engineer, consultant civil engineer in the city of LA, and do support my family by doing civil engineering for the developers. Deering?
What's your name?
Deering.
Deering.
Oh, is that not what you said?
Yeah, your name. Yeah, no. What was your last name?
Deering?
Darren.
Yeah.
No, Daren.
Deer, like the animal.
Oh no, I haven't called you up. I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. I thought you
Okay.
said my name.
Thank you. I'm so sorry. Eleni? Okay, welcome.
That is my good friend and client, Deering
Okay.
Volkman.
Well, it's our
Good
card
afternoon,
somewhere.
council members and the members here at large. My name is Eleni Christensen, and I oppose the linkage fee. Let me tell you a little bit about why. I work for a privately owned pipeline construction company that services the commercial and residential developers and contractors that build our neighborhoods. We work to install brand new underground infrastructure for new development. The majority of our workers for our company are Hispanic, much like many of the people here as well. I am also of Hispanic descent. I grew up in LA, much like many people here, so this place has a special place in my heart. I was on Skid Row. I was a Skid Row resident before I even knew that it had a zip code. So I know that we're in the midst of a housing crisis. I just went to 3 economic forecasts last week where the building industry said, what are we doing about it? This is something that's affecting us all. It's a state of our economy, not just the state of Los Angeles. Unfortunately, the developers are suffering the price. I urge you to please oppose the linkage fee. Thank you.
Christine Rangel, Gary Tobin, Suzette Shaw, who I believe we've called already, right? Reverend Eddie Anderson. Welcome.
Good afternoon, Christine from the Building Industry Association. BIA LAV is part of a coalition of 13 organizations opposing the linkage fee. We submitted our coalition letter to you yesterday. Since then, 5 additional have joined us, and I have a revised copy for you today. With the current housing crisis, it is astonishing that the city would propose additional housing costs. The effects of Measure JJJ were not taken into account in the Nexus study. Exempting those projects ignores the dramatically increased land prices resulting from JJJ. The industry is already suffering. The planning department has already seen a major drop-off in applications. JJJ has forced some of our members to look to other markets. This increase in costs will drive even more development out of the city. The city should be pursuing ways to work with housing developers to create more additional affordable housing, such as those found in our new white paper, which we released. We oppose this linkage fee. It's bad for Los Angeles. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Reverend Eddie Anderson. I rise before you in 2 capacities. As a senior pastor of the historic McCarty Memorial Christian Church, which was built in 1931 for $250,000. I also rise as the new regional organizer for LA Voice, focusing on South LA, including congregations in the districts of Council Members Price, Weston, and Harris-Dawson. I stand before you representing a coalition of over 40 organizations who are calling on you to support a strong linkage fee as part of a solution to our housing and homelessness crisis. Over the past several months, this coalition has come together to talk to over 50,000 voters to pass HH and H. And we have done this because Micah 6 and 8 tells us that what is good is to do justice and to love kindness. And we are doing this because the prophet Nehemiah reminds us that in order to do justice means great sacrifice, being unorthodox and listening to the cause of the ruins. We are sitting here 25 years after our city laid in ruins, and we are asking you to pass a strong linkage fee so that our Los Angeles Angelinos can fly and not be restricted by the housing markets. Please pass a strong linkage fee of at least $125 million or more. Thank you.
Gary Tobin, Richard Otterstrom, Adam Lane, Richard Ernst, Nate Holmes from Council District 15. Welcome.
Members of the Council, I'm Gary Tobin, President of the Los Angeles Area Chamber of Commerce, and on behalf of our membership, we're opposing the linkage fee proposal before you today. We have a long history with you working on Measure H and HHH to help the homeless. What we have here in front of us will make the situation worse. We know that there's a housing supply and housing affordability crisis, but the proposed linkage fee will increase, not decrease, the cost of building. Therefore, it will increase, not decrease, the cost of housing for the majority of Angelenos. It will also discourage commercial and industrial development, as pointed out in the letter that was attached to my statement from Bob Rick Industries, one of our fine manufacturers in the community. We urge you to work really hard on this issue, as you are, and we're ready to work with you. But this linkage fee proposal will make the situation worse, not better.
Council members, my name is Rick Ottestrom, past president of the Apartment Association of Greater Los Angeles, and AGLA represents operators, not developers. As those who house the city of Los Angeles, we have a unique understanding for the desperate need of more supply of housing. We want to see more housing built. When we have one vacancy but 5 families interested in the apartment, we can only rent to 1. 4 more have to go somewhere else and maybe don't find an apartment. We'd like to see more housing to take some of the pressure off of our housing and off of our association and off of our industry, but we don't gain anything else by getting housing the right way. This is not the right way. The proposal does more damage than good, and we ask you to please vote against it. Thank you.
Welcome. Good afternoon, council members. My name is Richard Ernst with Silverline Construction, and we oppose the linkage fee. According to the Nexus study, the linkage fee will produce $75 to $92 million annually, which after calculating for cost of development may yield at best 613 units annually. But we have 600,045 lower income households in Los Angeles living in non-subsidized housing. So the linkage fee will help only 0.1% of that number per year. The rest of the burden will fall on us if we don't win the housing lottery. The remaining 99.9% will see higher rents and home prices due to the increased cost of market rate housing to compensate for the increased subsidy of the 0.1%. We cannot afford higher costs, which is why I ask to oppose the linkage fee. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, my comments are related to item number 14. Do you want me to address those now?
Pardon me?
My comments are related to item 13 and 14.
Oh, sure. Yeah, we're taking them all together. That's fine.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good afternoon, Chairman Ueda and council members. My name is Adam Lane. I'm the legislative director at the LA Business Council. We represent over 450 business members across LA, including market rate developers, mixed income developers, and affordable housing developers. We simply lack the necessary funding to develop housing below 120% AMI, but also our restrictive policies around housing development have made the process way too burdensome to develop at all income levels. Our developers would all agree that building in LA is time-consuming and costly. We need to streamline and create certainty around the development process to ensure that we optimize any new revenues that we gain to build the most amount of projects as possible. For these reasons, we strongly support increasing the threshold for site plan review and the plan to allow new EIRs to be a part of the expedited processing section of city planning. Our current threshold imposes a one-size-fits-all solution that discourages growth across the city. The strong majority of our units are coming from buildings that are larger than 50 units. In 2015, over 60% of all units were in buildings that were 100 units or more. That's why we suggest that we increase the site plan threshold to 100 units. It's essential to cut down bureaucratic hurdles, and we strongly urge that you vote yes to increase the threshold. Thank you.
Thank you. Nate Holmes from Council District 15, Carol Citrone, Ann Hars, and Barbara Ringnet. Welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and fellow committee members. It's late in the day, so I'll be very brief.
Council District 15 would like to speak today in support of the HACLA request, the Housing Authority of the City of Los Angeles request to study a set-aside of linkage fee funds for public housing. A letter has been submitted by Jenny Scanlon, HACLA CEO Doug Guthrie, that it will spell it out in more detail, but I'm going to be very brief and simple here. HACLA's public housing in Section 8 portfolio represents over 2/3 of the city's affordable housing stock. HACLA operates over 82,000 affordable units citywide, manages 500 acres within 16 public housing sites, and we'd like to look at whether we can't make use of those sites in which the costs to build are lower because you don't have to acquire the land. So yesterday we had a groundbreaking in which at Jordan Downs we're going from 700 units to 1,400. We think we can do that throughout the city, and so we think this is worthy of study. Thank you.
Thank you. Carol Citrone, Ann Hars, Barbara Rignet, welcome.
Good afternoon. My name is Carol Citrone with CD13. I'm opposed to the increase of the threshold. Specifically, most projects that involve 50 or more units are most definitely destroying somebody's stable home. As you encourage the expediting of these projects, you are not only paving the way for development, you are also speeding up the process by which tenants will most likely lose their rent-stabilized homes in that area. We see and feel the swell of eviction and the loss of culture in our neighborhoods. These impacts are inextricably intertwined with all new development, even if it is truly infill, and these impacts need to be addressed with generous dose of public input. Here's yet another attempt to pave the way for evictions, more homelessness, more overly gentrified neighborhoods. There are real human impacts with these projects. Adding 50 units anywhere is a big deal. The human impacts of eviction, traffic, infrastructure, and loss of culture identity should require more review, not less. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. Barbara Ringette. I'm a board member of the Silver Lake Neighborhood Council and an elected Neighborhood Council budget advocate. Meeting with the City Planning Department and with HCID LA. Budget advocates strongly support an affordable housing linkage fee. It's time we had a permanent source of funding for affordable housing in Los Angeles. There are projects in the pipeline ready to go, awaiting funding, that's all. Regarding the threshold of 50 units, if the goal of this committee is to erode any confidence the public has in the City Council, then consider this ordinance. If the city intends to be transparent and open in the hopes of creating better projects for the developer, the community, and whoever will live in these new units, the city must expand, not restrict, notification and opportunities for neighborhood councils, residents, and property owners to be heard. Thank you.
Thank you. Ann Hars? Not here. Louise Bella or Beffa, Sarah Golden, Maximo Gutierrez. Welcome. Anybody whose name called, whoever comes up first.
Good afternoon, council member. My name is Louise Bella. I'm a community organizer, scheduled homeless advocate, and former Downtown Women Action Coalition co-chair and secretary. I wanted to thank you all for even considering the use of linkage fee to be used to reduce homelessness. It is a social justice type of ordinance. It is needed. I wanted developers to know that the fee that they propose in the market rate are too high. 50% of the people probably cannot even afford those fees. So I support linkage fee. I commend this council to even put it in the books. And please move forward with it, because right now as we speak, people are sleeping in fecuses and urine in third world conditions. And so therefore, I understand people who oppose it, but please let's be humane. Thank you.
Thank you. Welcome.
Good afternoon. My name is Sarah Golden with VICA, the Valley Industry Commerce Association. VICA is opposed to the linkage fee as drafted. Los Angeles has a crisis of not just affordable housing, but of market rate housing that is affordable. The proposed linkage fee will only fund 400 units of affordable housing. In funding those units, the linkage fee will cost thousands of market rate units that are affordable. As drafted, the linkage fee will significantly increase the cost to build, making it financially infeasible to build market rate housing that's affordable. The linkage fee will deter businesses from moving to Los Angeles and stop developers from building the housing that this city needs. The city should be incentivizing new market rate housing in affordable areas rather than increasing the cost of market rate housing to build a small number of affordable housing units. VICA opposes the proposed linkage fee. It is bad for the Valley and bad for Los Angeles. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Maximo Gutierrez, Ernesto Espinoza, Rosa Curiel, Cindy Sterrett, Rudy Collins, Sean Evenheim. Those are the remaining cards I have. The policy of this committee is that once we started taking public comment, new cards are not accepted. But if you feel you submitted a public comment card before we started public comment, please speak to the clerk up here to my left. Thank you. Máximo Gutiérrez.
Buenas tardes, mi nombre es Máximo Gutiérrez, soy voluntario de LA Boy.
Necesita que le traduzcan lo que dice. Un momento,
Sí.
por favor. Gracias. Puede empezar de nuevo, por favor. Gracias.
Sí, mi nombre es Máximo Gutiérrez, soy voluntario de LA Boy.
My name is Maximo Gutierrez. I'm a volunteer with LA Voice.
Estoy aquí porque pues estoy mirando que nosotros los pobres estamos excluidos, nos toman en cuenta, más aún si somos ilegales.
I'm here because I noticed that a lot of us are low income and some of us do not have legal status here.
Yo estoy pasando una situación difícil, he estado durmiendo en la calle, antes de tocando puertas, buscando dónde dormir.
I'm in a tough situation where sometimes I sleep on the street, I'm knocking on doors and looking for a place to sleep.
Hasta que encontré Misión Dolores que me brindó un techo.
Until I found Misión Dolores, which provided a roof over my head.
Y a raíz de un accidente en el trabajo, tengo problemas de desgarros en mis hombros, en la columna y en el cuello.
And due to a work accident, I have several issues with my body, including my back, my spinal column, and so forth.
Difícilmente puedo trabajar lastimándome en trabajos pesados que hay. Ahorita estoy ganando $200 por semana, difícilmente voy a pagar una renta.
It's hard for me to find work. I'm earning about $200 a week, and it is hard for me to pay for living with that earning.
Es una situación difícil para mí. Yo creo que pues hay muchas personas como yo con problemas de esta clase.
I know it is a tough situation for myself, but I know that there are several other people who have a similar situation.
Gracias.
Thank you.
Gracias. Ernesto Espinosa, not here. Rosa Curiel, Cindy Sterrett, Rudy Collins, Sean Evenheim. Bienvenidos.
Buenas tardes, mi nombre es Rosa Curiel. Pertenezco a la comunidad de Boyle Heights y vivo en Boyle Hotel y represento a ILAC.
Hello, my name is Rosa Curiel. I'm a current resident of Boyle Heights. I represent East LA Community Corporation and I live in Boyle Hotel Apartments.
Boyle Hotel es un complejo de apartamentos de vivienda económica y los programas de vivienda económica permiten a la clase trabajadora de ingresos no altos la posibilidad de encontrar un lugar digno donde vivir y a precios asequibles. Y yo soy un ejemplo de eso. Soy sobreviviente de violencia doméstica, terminé un matrimonio de 20 años y Boyle Hotel me dio la oportunidad de encontrar un lugar digno, limpio, amplio donde vivir con mis hijas y a un precio razonable.
Boyle Hotel gave me the opportunity to live a decent life and better the quality of life of mine and my family. Boyle Hotel is an affordable housing site that has allowed not only my family but other families to be provided benefits and services that allow me to improve it. I suffer domestic violence, and I support the linkage fee because the linkage fee will allow to provide affordable housing to my family and other families that suffer the same situation or other situations.
La vivienda a precios económicos al alcance de la clase trabajadora permite que las familias tengan un nivel de vida económico mucho más al alcance de sus posibilidades, y positivamente puedo decir que este programa está bueno para que prevalezca en la ciudad de Los Ángeles. Por favor, permitan que el mismo continúe beneficiando a más familias y engrandeciendo y embelleciendo nuestras comunidades. Gracias.
Gracias. Thank you. Wayne, let this be your first warning that you're disrupting this meeting. No, I'm not calling you up. But you're waving your puppet here. I'm not calling you up, sir. If you do something again, I'm going to say that's your second warning. I'm asking you to leave this meeting. And for the public who's here for the first time, this individual disrupts this meeting every time. So can you, Wayne, if you could leave the city clerk, or if you're going to stay there, do not wave that puppet around. It's distracting to this meeting. And we're going to ask you to leave if you keep doing that. Thank you. Cindy Starrett, Brady Collins, Sean Evenheim.
Hello, members of the committee. My name is Brady Collins. I'm policy analyst at the Koreatown Immigrant Workers Alliance. Founded in 1992, KIWA is a workers center that has been working at the intersection of workers and tenants' rights for over 25 years. In 2013, we completed our construction of our first affordable housing development, which included strong labor standards and included a percentage of units for previously homeless and at-risk foster care youth. We're ready to build more projects like this, but can't because there's very little local funding for these populations. We know the demand is there. For our 52-unit project, we received over 4,000 applications. We strongly support a linkage fee, one that is at least $15 per square foot for apartments and $7 for commercial buildings, because it will allow us to leverage the local funds we need to develop more projects like our current one and ensure the thousands of families on our waiting list are not waiting there forever. Thank you.
Good afternoon, council members. Sean Evenheim, California Home Builders. We are developing workforce housing in the San Fernando Valley for 20-some years. As you heard today, everyone agree we have a problem of housing in the city, but it's not just a low-income housing problem, it's a housing problem. And you heard the teachers speaking here today. That's who's going to get hurt, the teacher, the police officers, the firefighters, people that really need workforce housing. This fee will eliminate all the projects we are building. Since November, since JJJ, we didn't acquire any project. That's what's going to happen in LA if we keep adding these fees and this impact. And the people we're really going to hurt are the workforce people in this city that need the affordable housing and not just low-income housing. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we have more cards, and apparently there was some confusion as to whether we've had items number 10, 11, and 12, 13, and 14 available, and people were going to turn those in after we started this item. So we're going to allow those cards to be heard. There's about 8 of them, but from here on in, we're not accepting any more public comment cards. Will Wright, Pastor Dudley Chapman, Bill Reynolds, and Ron Miller.
Will Wright with the AIA. Thank you for your time and your leadership on this, and want to commend the Department of City Planning for moving this forward. It's a very technical issue. We have a couple of questions that we'd like clarified for the record. One regarding with the exemptions. If you provide your 40% of affordability, is the entire 100% of the project exempt, or is only the 40% exempt? We've heard a couple of different interpretations of that. The other is the nexus itself seems to have some litigious vulnerabilities that we want to make sure are clarified, especially in that the story about how producing housing adds or exasperates the need for additional housing. I think that nexus is very vulnerable. Especially in that you have different fees for the different amounts. So if you have $1 for 5 units or less, or $12 for 6 units or more, I think that creates a litigious vulnerability that you need to examine further.
Pastor Dudley Chapman, are you here? Bill Reynolds, Ron Miller, welcome.
Hi, Bill McReynolds, here for item 9. Strongly opposed to the linkage fee. This proposal is akin to basically filling an ocean with a garden hose and will make no real progress toward alleviating the housing crisis. It'll benefit less than 1% of lower income households and harm the remaining 600,000 plus families that must now contend with higher rents because of the additional burdens placed on housing production. So the Los Angeles housing market will likely become more stagnated, not less, and begin to suffocate under the weight of this program. Thank you.
Thank you. Sylvie Shane, Puppet, and George Abrams. Welcome.
Thank you, esteemed members of the Plum Committee. I'm speaking about items 11 and 12, which are relative to motions that were taken after the 1850 Cherokee Hotel conversion and the loopholes that that project exposed. Number 11, in terms of recommendations for closing loopholes, one of the biggest loopholes that exists is the fact that the baseline review of projects is pretty much the day that the developer files. There needs to be a baseline review that is for 5 years prior, because that will stop developers from evicting and vacating these buildings in order for that baseline to be a vacant building. And it will also do a lot more to protect the re-rental rights of tenants under the Ellis Act. The other thing is that relating to a proper RSO report in terms of the impact to RSO units, we definitely need to keep track of the rental amounts of the units that are affected by each individual project. And that would be accomplished if the baseline review was for an extended period of time. I've provided the full recommendation in written form. Thank you.
Thank you. Puppet, George Abrams.
Okay, go ahead.
Yes, we will agree with Satan. We will support stopping the linkage fee. We agree with the devil. Yes, the developer devils. Everybody knows the devil is right sometimes. We have to stop these fucking fees. The fees will not give us any housing. They'll just take it and put it into the pension funds. That's why they're looking on their phones right now. They're Googling theft. It's PC 484 for those of you that wonder. Yes, they're going to go to prison. So no on this fucking thing, 7%, 8%, 9%, then it becomes 20 fucking percent and then 25. You know, like the income tax in 1913 was 6%. You people up, and the fucking housing goes down. And then we're all homeless, and then we'll be like Jose Huizar, fatter and bolder. No on this proposal. Yes, thank you.
Hey, why doesn't the mouth move on that piggy? It's not moving. Which piggy's talking? Mr. Abrams.
Okay. The site plan review offers significant community benefits and protections for neighboring existing residents. It offers conformance with general community plans, compatibility with neighborhood properties and recreational and service amenities to improve habitability and minimize impacts to neighboring properties. If anything, this number needs to be reduced to 25 rather than increased to 100. And your change is just another part of the constant erosion of protections for city residents, whether it's Airbnbs, granny flats, or elimination of conditions for variances when you upzone to, quote, make zoning consistent with current use, end quote, in community plan updates, or elimination of on-site child care in the Vermont Western Specific Plan. And this constant destruction of our planning laws needs to end.
Thank you. That concludes public comment. And if we could ask both the Planning Department and HCID to come back up, please. I'll start off with a few questions that I have. And the first is, a number of the speakers who came up talked about how charging any fees or any fees at all or fees that are high may deter development and therefore cut our supply. Have we quantified or studied that, been quantified it somewhat? Have we done some studies on that?
Yes, again, Ken Bernstein, Department of City Planning. As I indicated, the previous discussion, our opening, and the discussion earlier, in part, the Nexus study, the feasibility analysis, was meant to get at this and looked at the feasibility across different development types and geographies in the city and established a maximum fee amount across each of those types that could be sustained. And we did take care to set the proposed ordinance fee level at a level substantially below that fee amount, no more than kind of the lowest common denominator, $5 per square foot, which was the lowest $5 per square foot for non-residential development. The $12 recommendation for residential development is only 2/3 the amount that could be, that is the maximum feasible amount, which was $18. And for many development types of residential, you could sustain a fee substantially more than that. So we tried to build in a significant cushion on residential development, recognizing that the fee was being imposed across different geographies in the city and potentially across different points of a development cycle moving forward.
Great, thank you. What about the tenants? Would some of these new fees pass through to rents?
Well, so the way the fee gets allocated obviously will differ from project to project. And I think one thing that has been experienced in other cities, and the literature that we referred to earlier has underscored, is that only some of those costs get passed along to tenants in the form of additional rents. Often what occurs is that some of that fee over time gets baked into land costs that the fee assumptions, a developer would be able to pay less in terms of land costs with the expectation that the fee would be imposed moving forward on future projects. So there's a lot of complicated economic analysis that goes into this, ideas of elasticity, who pays in economics, but often it gets baked in over time to land costs, which is why, as you've heard from some of the testimony, we've not seen a significant chilling effect in other cities where such a fee has been imposed.
So there are some fees that you cannot pass through to tenants, and depending on the type of fee. On this fee, there's nothing to prevent a developer from passing this through to the tenant.
Well, if the fee gets imposed on the new development and how that gets allocated, again, whether it gets factored into a transaction with a future buyer or gets passed along to tenants, that will differ from project to project and based on market conditions at any given point in time.
Okay. And the city currently has an affordable housing trust fund. This ordinance establishes a new fund called the Housing Impact Trust Fund. Why do we create a new trust fund and not just funnel this money to the existing housing trust fund?
The reason for the new trust fund was to promote accountability and clarity in reporting. It's very important that as we establish a new fee of this type, that we monitor and track the expenditures from that trust fund as opposed to commingling it with other funds from other funding sources in order to provide accountability both back to the development community that is the source of these revenues, as well as to the community at large. So that was the primary motivation for establishing a new trust fund to ensure that accountability moving forward.
Okay. Now, this is both for planning and HCID. What's missing from the proposal is that we don't have an implementation plan. Albeit when we did HHH, we set some general categories of how we would like to see that money spent. For example, permanent supportive housing was a priority. We did some affordable. We did some general sense of how much of shelters, of other needs for homeless. But here, there's a request to develop a plan over 6 months, but it doesn't tell us how that money will be spent. Are there, will there be legal limitations on how we can spend it? Is it going to programming or just new development? Are there priorities? What are the priorities? Because the department's priorities may not be the council's priorities, and we'd like to see that or see an inkling of what that is before I would support something like this. So any thoughts to that?
Absolutely, Councilman. I appreciate the question. Prior to the passage of HHH, there was the trust fund. home dollars and utilization of low-income housing tax credits and any other source of monies we could cobble together. And the priorities were established by the Housing Committee, and then the full council and the mayor supported that. And as of right now, it's 300 supportive housing units, plus 80% of any of our projects must be transit-oriented development projects. And by and large, that is what is in our pipeline right now. Now, with the passage of HHH, there's particular guidelines associated with that. It's gone through the Citizens Oversight Committee, the Administrative Oversight Committee, and it's going to be heard by the Joint Poverty and Homeless and Housing Committee tomorrow with the specific guidelines for this expenditure of HHH. Those are permanent sort of housing projects. We are going to have two pipelines. That'll be HHH, and then we'll have the trust fund projects. When a linkage fee is created, we will tap into those sources of monies, but the priority of how we are going to invest those dollars will be created by the council, whether it be 80% TOD project, 50%, whether we want to do senior or family, transit-oriented, anything that the council want. We will provide input, our recommendations are based on what the needs are, but the policy, and as they are right now, and will be in the future, of any dollars that we receive for expenditures for affordable housing or supportive housing for the homeless are created by the council, and that's what we follow.
Okay, so to be clear then, in HHH, I suppose, because we're going to the voters, asking them to approve a new revenue source, we're saying, if you approve this,
yes,
this is how we will spend your money.
That is correct.
Here we're saying, okay, we want a new fee, let's create the new revenue source, and then we're going to ask council as to what that implementation, how we will spend it.
That is correct, Councilman, and I would offer the fact that this is just akin to another source of money, much like home, and we will dovetail those dollars and leverage them as best we can with tax credits and any other sources of monies. And I must note that you've heard 400 units. That is based on the assumption that we would utilize $100 million and every single dollar would be going into those affordable housing projects with no other leverage source, and that's simply not the case. We don't produce housing with just one source of dollars. We cobble together with other source of monies as well as low-income housing tax credits. So the number will be far greater than that.
Okay, and one of the concerns I have is that we are losing a number of affordable housing units that have existing covenants under rent control. And I'm disappointed the city doesn't even have an inventory with those covenants. It's difficult to get an answer like which ones exist and where. But nonetheless, so here we are losing a number of covenants that have protect affordable housing, protect rent-controlled units. And over here, we're saying we're going to build more, getting a fee to create more. Can some of this money be used to protect some of those covenants?
It's really a policy decision for the council. Let me just back up to your point about preserving covenants that potentially are being or expiring. We track that. We have a team in our department dedicated to solely track expiring or what they call at-risk projects where the covenants are going to expire in the next 5 years. We triage those projects. We contact the property owners well in advance of the 5-year time frame to ensure that we know what their intentions are and see if we can work out either financially or non-financially for the extension of those covenants. So in the last year, I'm proud to say that we've actually preserved more than we lost, which is the first time we could ever say that. So we're in the upswing as far as that goes. Certainly resources...
And before you go on,
yes.
what funding was used to preserve them?
Bond financing in particular.
Bond monies from where?
We're conduit bond financiers as well. So it's low-income housing tax credits, 4% with bond financing that enables us to extend the covenants and be able to enable the property owner to remediate the property, rehab, extend the useful life of that property while extending the covenants of affordability for that building. So to your question about can we utilize these resources for expiring covenants, again, that's a policy decision. I would recommend that as a strategy. It works effectively in some areas, more so than others. It depends on the motivation of the individual property owners, whether they're mission-driven or not, whether they truly want to extend the covenants or not. We've been successful of late doing so, but that certainly could be a strategy that we could recommend and the committee and the council could discuss. But I will say, once again, to the notion of reporting back in 6 months, that's important. We always seek council and mayor's concurrence as to how best to utilize the resources, but this isn't something that's being created from scratch. This is what we do for a living, work with the developer community. So this is nothing new. This is just another source of monies. We have a pipeline of projects ready to go. So once we get resources in play, we're rolling. So it's not as if we're waiting and wondering what we're going to do with the money. We already know how to do this. It's just a matter of within the framework of what type of housing, where we want the housing to be is really the policy decision of this body.
Right. Thank you very much. Mr. Harris Dawson, then Mr. Price.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chair, and thank you to everybody who participated today. It's very meaningful, and you make our democracy real when you come and share your stories and interests. So I never like to let an opportunity pass where we don't acknowledge that. I have a couple questions and a little bit of a pickle that we're in. And this is a citywide issue, but I just want to zero in on the district I represent. Fully, of all the housing units that we've entitled in our district during the time that I've been on the council, fully 91.2% of them have been affordable, and they've required some type of subsidy from the categories that you all talked about earlier, the categories that the linkage fee would fund. Of the 0.8% that weren't, those units are not affordable to teachers and firefighters and police. They're way beyond their price range. So from our point of view, from where we're sitting, the claim that you're going to stop building if you do the linkage fee is completely meaningless because the builders aren't building anyway. The market has completely failed in this part of the world. It's not just my district; it's beyond that. But these are the numbers, the numbers that we have. Can you talk some about this idea of market rate versus affordable, and who can afford them and who can't? It's my understanding that when I look at the area median income, and if you look at 60 or 70% of that, in fact, a starting firefighter qualifies for that. Definitely a starting teacher qualifies for that. So when we talk about affordable housing, as far as I know, and you can help me with this, we're not talking about a separate category from what we call workforce housing.
That is correct. And we are restricted by the source of monies we have, either with the federal funds or tax credits, low-income housing tax credits, to 80% area median income. What you're referring to, Councilman, though, is that delta beyond that, 81 to, say, 150% of area median income, workforce housing. And that's the area that really primarily through the city of Los Angeles over the years has achieved really through density bonus and not much more. The market rate's going to take care of itself at the higher end based on where it's going to get the best return for its investment. And that also means it may not invest in certain areas of the city. Where it can utilize federal funds, tax credits, it's going to go where it can actually get the best return, that is low home prices or transit-oriented development where they get the incentive to build transit developments. So that gap in between is an area that's always been a troubling product for the city to be able to produce. The density bonus is the primary way to do so. I would suggest that with a linkage fee cobbled together with the correct source of monies, we could create a program for moderate income housing so that we're able to not just produce 80% AMI housing in certain areas of the city, we could actually build potentially workforce housing as well that would be able to support areas of the city that aren't necessarily getting that midpoint or mid-range housing that's desperately needed throughout the city.
So thank you. And then just a final question, just trying to get a logistical sense to help me adjust our sense of urgency. So you said earlier that the funds for the different subsidies would essentially zero out over a period of time that we can kind of see from where we are now. Given the number I just gave you at 91.2% of the housing that gets produced in my district, relying on one of these sources of fundings, when should I expect housing development to essentially end? Given that the private unsubsidized sector just hasn't responded and it doesn't promise to respond any time near soon.
If we exclude sources such as HHH and the financing for supportive housing for the homeless, and we're talking strictly about low-income affordable housing, which is home funds, 9% low-income housing tax credits, whatever we have in the queue now, which would last us about a year. And there's probably in the range of about 20 some odd projects that are ready to begin construction or earmarked for receipt of those funds. But beyond that, the horizon would be stark.
Got it. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Price?
The efforts of staff. You guys have really done a lot of good work on this, and I also appreciate the thoughtful comments made by the public on both sides of this issue. There's no doubt in my mind that we do need to have a linkage fee to help address the housing dilemma that we're in. But I think it is important also that we get this fee piece right. And I'm just not totally convinced that one size fits all is the way to do it. I'm certainly not opposed to higher fees in the medium and higher areas, but I am more concerned about the fees as they impact the low markets, my area, the markets that Councilman Marquise Harris-Dawson just referenced. And so I don't know if I just need to study this more, or if there's some report backs that we can get, or additional anecdotal information. But I just want to make sure that that we're not disadvantaging areas that really need development, that have not had the development, and making sure that there are resources available to assist in projects in those areas. And so, again, Mr. Chairman, I don't know if it's a report back just on additional information, or we just need to mull it over more. I know time is of the essence. I know we've been working on this for several months, several years, and we don't want to lose time, but I just want to make sure that we are on the firmest footing possible as we move forward with it.
Okay. Thank you. Anyone else? Mr. Cedillo?
Thank you, Senator. I agree with you because we don't have time. We don't have time to waste. This is a crisis situation, and we have to figure out how we address this. My suggestion is that we figure out what's the number that we need, what's the cost, right? We're talking about 100 million, but then we hear that 100 million produces 400 to 600 units. That's hardly the comprehensive solution, and given the weight of this political battle, given the intensity of the discourse here, it seems that this would be better utilized on a more comprehensive solution. And so I think in terms of a report back, we should get some report back that tells us how much money do we need, right? I mean, we're talking about 100 million, but is it 250 million? Is it $1 billion, right? And then, hold on, what does that buy us, right? Because buying us 400 units or 600 units is inadequate for the challenge that confronts us. I think Gary Blasey was right earlier that we need to think in terms of what's the challenge that confronts us. And I could tell you that 66% of the units that were developed in my tenure in my district were all affordable, and yet our homeless numbers went up 50%. So obviously we have to figure out a bigger hit. And so I think that's important in terms of what it buys us. $100 million may have meant something when Mayor Villaraigosa came in, and it was a nice big round number, and he liked to talk in those big round numbers, but today it doesn't seem to meet the challenges that confront us. We're in a worse situation than we've ever been, and so what's the number we need? Is it 250? Is it 500? Is it $1 billion? I know you're anxious to answer. Then we need to figure out how we get there. I will say to you what I said to my staff. I'm agnostic about the process. Frankly, I'm interested in what are the strategies that get us to that number? What are the various revenue streams or processes that get us to that number, right? Because there's a whole range of things. What I hear from the developer community is it's all about process and speed and certainty. I could tell you about 80 units that were set to be built the minute I came into office. 4 years later, CEQA abuse later, those units haven't been built. The developers lost over $1 million, and those 80 units, which would have housed 250 people, aren't built. So there was no gain there. This new review, this input, this other what NIMBYism and other names is had this adverse impact on us, and homelessness increases. And so we need to look at the fuller context of what it is that we're trying to accomplish. Because this is a huge moment and a huge political battle for a very modest price. I mean, if the price is 400 units, it's inadequate. And so we need to go beyond that. Let me suggest that we need to look at other revenue streams. We need to look at the process. We need a real number. This is where you can come in on the Trump effect. The fact of the matter is that Trump is cutting back, and there's going to be a void there. There's going to be a tsunami there. That is a real number. We need a backfill on that real number. If rich people, not the rich people, but billionaires are getting tax breaks, then we need to figure out how to capture that from the state of California, because we have to backfill this, and this amount that we're fighting over right now may not do that. And so we're going to end up in a worse situation. So we're taking very costly political votes, but we may not be reaching the solution. So one of the real factors is, what's the Trump effect? When does it come into effect? And how much is it going to cost us? So that we can have a strategy and a plan to backfill that. Because if not, we think we're going forward and we're actually going further back. We're starting further back even though we think we're making a step forward. And that's not going to put us in a better position today. This cannot be discussed outside the context of reviewing our RSO, without reviewing the Alice Act, without reviewing CEQA abuse, without reviewing Costa-Hawkins. All these things are factors in displacement and in cost and in speculation. And so all these have to be factors that are discussed within this framework. I'm interested, I heard someone talk about that there were less people applying to build since JJJ. Is that true? What's the cause? What's the totality of the framework that this is taking place? What is the cost of the Trump effect? And then, as the chairman said, what are the other strategies? Because today we can't just build ourselves out of this. Preservation has to be part of our strategy. We have to have the flexibility and all the funds that are available to us. We have to have the flexibility to take advantage of existing infrastructure, rehab, rebuild, and also extend covenants. My question.
Thank you. Does that require an answer? Or
Trump effect is one of the
statement?
first ones.
In 5 words or less. Okay. Well, the short answer, well, first of all, I would say is 400 has been circulated. That's not an accurate number. It would be far greater than that because that represents, once again, no other leverage source. I want to be clear of that. It would be much greater than that. The Trump effect.
Mr. Fontes, let me stop you, though, because so there's the leveraging.
Yes.
But on the other hand, we're saying that the dollars that we might leverage are going away. So I just want to get clear on that.
Well, there, at the very least, tax credits, 4% or 9% tax credits, and there are typically other sources of monies, cap and trade dollars. We've been very successful with that. The last round, we received $63 million for housing, the $25 million for public works. As other sources become available. On the HHH side, of course, I'm just talking about that. There's no place like home dollars from the state, as well as, of course, the HHH funds. So there's always other source of monies, but the very least, you've got tax credits. And then in some instances, we've got 44 parcels of city land that we're developing as well. That will reduce the cost as well for housing, whether it be first-time home buyer, whether it be multifamily, single-family, or multifamily affordable, or even supportive housing. So there's always other sources of money. So it would never be just our direct dollars going in. So it's always going to be greater than that. But more than happy to have further discussion of that. But we can show you that the sources of monies always change over time. The federal dollar, though, which appears to be at risk right now, without just the entitlement alone is approximately $20 million. So that could happen as early as October when the federal budget's approved. So if you're looking for that minimum dollar amount to replace, it'd be $20 million. We do get program income, and that program income will continue, but that'll obviously decline and dwindle as the years go on. But that entitlement itself is $20 million from the federal government, October, with the federal budget. You ask what the need is. The Regional Housing Needs Assessment over an 8-year period said we needed to produce at 80% AMI and below for that 8-year period, almost 83,000 units. 83,000 units. So if we're discussing this linkage fee and thinking this is the one answer, there's no silver bullet. It's a combination of various items, including HHH, including how we reform our processes, which we already are doing. Will it be resolved overnight? No, it will not.
For clarification, were those 83,000 affordable or 83,000 just units, period?
That 83,000 total, 32 of which, I'm sorry, it was 82,000 of units needed to be produced in the city of LA. I misspoke. I'm glad you caught that. 32,000 of which had to be affordable, 80% AMI and below. So that's a huge number, 32,000. That's what the need stated from 2013 to 2021. So we're not going to stand here and say HHH and even a linkage fee of $100 million is going to solve to 82,000 units. That's simply not the case, but it certainly gets us a heck of a lot closer with that, as well as HHH and the processes that we're incorporating, as well as the city land we're offering. There's many different ways we can approach this.
Thank you. Ms. Jenglander?
Thank you very much. Well, in backing up on your comments, 83,000 units that are in need in the city of Los Angeles, 32,000 being affordable, which would mean we need about 50,000 market rate as well, if the math serves me.
Yep.
So I'm going to talk about that for a minute. The feasibility study, actually, let me take a step back. This is one of the most important discussions we can have. We are at in fact, I would say in our lifetime, our single individual largest moral dilemma that we have is housing our homeless and taking care of those in need. That's our challenge today before us. That's our biggest single challenge that we have as individuals. Our forefathers had larger challenges like building infrastructure, connectivity, and creating electricity. We have to house people. And coming from a place of, I was homeless. And that was, the road to getting there was even worse than just being there. From having a family that lived in a one-bedroom apartment. And when my mom was lucky enough to sleep on the couch and didn't have to sleep on the floor because one of us would be out. That's where I come from. And this problem has grown exponentially for so many different reasons. As my colleagues know, I'm deeply ingrained in this issue and hungry for solutions. One of the fundamental key pieces of this legislation is the feasibility study. That's the connectivity of and the base of what this is established on, creating a fee to come up with a revenue stream that doesn't damage the system and creates a balance. I'm shocked that this is finally here and I've yet to receive a briefing on the feasibility study or have been asked if we wanted to participate in a briefing or a presentation on just that, since this is the link of what brings all this together. We're getting hit from so many different sides on this issue of concern, and here's the thing, they're all right. Everybody's correct. I mean, the simple math, I literally just scratched these together while we were sitting here and I was listening to everybody. Started this right before committee. So some people said, well, the fees are really equivalent in what we're suggesting in other municipalities. Well, other municipalities don't have all the fees and costs that we have as well. We have base fees, block wall inspection fees, building permit fees, building plan checks, building standard commission surcharge. We have a city planning surcharge, demolition fees, development service center surcharges, dwelling unit fees, electrical meter fees, electrical permit residential fees, electrical plan check fees, environmental and CEQA, EQ instrumentation, equipment and training surcharge, a fire permit fee, general plan maintenance surcharge, grading permits. We have a document transfer fee, hydrants and application access fees, inspection fees, landscape plan approval fees, LUSD and school fees. We charge them for LexisNexis. We had our lid development, mitigation fees, our one-stop surcharge, operating surcharge, park bond fees, plan approval, fee and plan check, plan maintenance, plumbing permit, and connection fees, plan check fees. We have Quimby fees, which we've also just increased. We have sewer permit fees. There are 6 different categories of those. We have supplemental temporary power fees, system development surcharges, transportation study fees, water and power. Doesn't speak to Measure JJJ. And oh, by the way, every single project that comes through one of our offices that has any concern whatsoever, all of us get involved and negotiate community benefit packages, transportation improvements, affordable housing trust fund dollars, LEED standards, open space set-asides, park improvements, and of course, less density because the neighborhood councils won't allow what's being proposed. So I'll just start off with that. Let's go to linkage fees. That's the ones I knew, by the way. Alphabetize, some credit, come on. Okay, so Excel has a sort function. That takes us to, if we add those up with what's being proposed, it's about $70,000 a door. $70,000 a door. Now, it was stated earlier by somebody that actually said, well, it's not really passed through the tenant. And the land use acquisition cost is the land use acquisition cost. I will tell you right now, I've never met a single developer in my life who says, you know what, I'm building this project out of the conscience of my heart. I hope not to make a dime. In fact, I'm going to build till I'm broke. Have never met them. Now, it doesn't make them the evil doers of all time. In fact, these are the very people who we often have to negotiate with and ask our local community stakeholders and neighborhood councils to say, okay, we understand you don't want this density, but what's acceptable? And this person's going to build it. And we also get our community rooms and our new playground equipment and all the other things. I've met a couple good ones. They're not all bad. But now, having said that, though, it's creating this balance. And I don't want to go off on a rant, but we've got some major issues that I'm struggling with. All in, forget land use cost, acquisition, building, JJJ, material costs, and wages increases, exponentially increasing here. Forget that. Every developer, no matter who they are, affordable housing or otherwise, in fact, I know quite a few really good, reputable, affordable housing developers that make a lot of money. So set that aside. They're all going to figure out what they need to charge, and let's just talk about market rate. If you had 70,000 fees, here's the simple math, $70,000 worth of fees per door at market rate housing per door. Let's say they spread it out over 10 years. 10 years, that's about the average somebody's going to stay in an apartment. Entry-level market rate apartment. That may be even a little high. Maybe it's 5 to 7 years, but we'll say 10 years. That means their rent, if they're passing just the fees through, is $600 more a month just in fees. The average rent here in Los Angeles is $2,000 a month. Some would argue $2,200. We'll go to the benefit of the doubt and go to the lowest, $2,000 a month. Now, the rule of thumb is your rent should be 1/3 of your salary. So you only have to make $72,000 a year to live in the $2,000 a month, one-bedroom apartment in a moderate, and I'll be generous, moderate community. What's the entry market rate housing, Marquise, in your district, do you know, roughly? A couple $1,000 a month for a one-bedroom. So 2 school teachers, 2 firefighters, 2 nurses that are married and have dual incomes cannot afford a one-bedroom apartment based on that formula. We have to build affordable housing, there's no doubt, no question. The question is on whose back and how do we do this collectively together, collaboratively. I think Councilmember Cedillo said it best. We've got to look at every source of different revenue streams. We can't just put it all in one place because we're all in this together. Or do we want to have a city and do we have a vision that 10, 20, 30 years down the road, every single person, every single resident, no matter what, unless you are the ultra-rich, multimillionaire or billionaire, you will live in an affordable housing project, period. Is that the vision? Or is it a split? People are living in squalor. It's not right, and there's too many people living on the streets. But if we take away units, it hurts us too. So we need a balance. And this is the dilemma, the moral dilemma that we have. I vow to work tirelessly with each and every one of you And what I would ask for is not a report back, but a working group. I will throw myself at it and work with our director of planning, and so when this comes back, we can look at no stone left unturned, look at all opportunities on the table. Everybody wants to stick it to the developer. Hey, that would be a great option. At the end of the day, we're sticking it to the nurse, the teacher, the firefighter. That's who's really, and they can't afford it, and they're moving out of Los Angeles, and they're commuting 2 hours. My daughter's cheer coach at her high school drives 2 hours each way, she was telling me the other day, because she can't afford, her and her husband, to live anywhere near the high school she teaches at. It's completely untouchable, and she's planning to have a family. We got to change something. Something's not right. So I would ask that, and urgently, that I'm willing to work with and not just ask for reports back, that I want a full briefing on the feasibility study. I want to look at not only everything you got right in it, but anything that people might have another opinion on and ways to move forward, and bring in all the partners who spoke here today. And I thank you very much for everybody who took the time out of your day today to be here to speak up on this critical issue. I thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Well, with that, let's move items 10 through 14 and refer those to staff. Those are items 10 through 14. That's a package of land use related items that relate to affordable housing, and we're working with my colleague, Councilmember Gil Cedillo, on those items, and we'll get those as refer those to staff. Most of those are report backs, so we'll look at those when they come back. On item 9, if we could continue this item, as is the case with large policy items, when it gets to the committee level, we oftentimes like to hear the reports, like to hear from the public, have the committee members ask questions, and then come back for another round. And that's the situation we find ourselves in now. So with that, we will continue it, but we also want to work expeditiously on this as well. The issue we have before us is that Council is going into recess in July. In order to get these reports back, we will probably foresee scheduling this again early August, just given the time in June that it takes to get these report backs, and then Council recess in July. Maybe early August is the earliest we could schedule this again.
As a side note, I'll work through July on this as well while we're in recess. It might even give me a better opportunity and time away from you guys to do it with you. All right, thanks.
But we do have some report backs that we want. I know as my colleagues were speaking, I hope the departments were writing those down, questions they had. To be clear on our end, we wanted, at least myself, wanted a framework for the expenditure plan and how funding needs would be prioritized. We don't need anything for adoption at this time, but just if we could describe a process in which that implementation plan will come up. What are the different options? What's the implementation plan look like? Like I said, doesn't mean we're voting on one, but just to get a sense of what the process is, a framework for that. We have here a written report back request from Council District 9 and Council Member Price. So if we could get that cleared up, and I think Mr. Cedillo, Mr. Englander, and Mr. Harris-Dawson also had some requests. I don't know if you want to reiterate those, or just when you were speaking, you were taking those in, correct? Or are you clear? Do you need to make that clear?
Again, Ken Bernstein, Department of City Planning. It would be helpful if you could reiterate. We were taking notes, but wanted to be clear on some of the particular requests. Mr. Price, I think you did speak about looking at not one size fits all and geographic variation. Are you looking for a report back on policy options to achieve that? Okay. Yeah,
and Mr. Price has his written. He submitted something in writing, so those are available to you in writing. Okay.
Thank you. And we did get your note on the overall need and the Trump effect. Were there any other specific report backs?
revenue streams, potential revenue streams, right, the whole kind of bucket. And then those policy changes, we just approved 4 of them right now, but the policy changes that we talked about in terms of kind of stabilizing the workforce, and then the number related to what's the amount that we can preserve through the covenants, what's available, what's in danger, 5 years, 10 years, 20 years.
Thank you.
Right.
And Mr. Harris Dawson?
Also, I wanted us to zero in on some definition of terms. So, actually, what is affordable, and what are examples of professions that it applies to, and ones that it absolutely does not. So we'll know that. And then this term market rate, just to be precise about what we're referring to when we use it.
Okay, you were clear on Mr. Englander. You had to leave, but we're clear on his comments. So we could have those report backs, and like I said, we anticipate taking this up when we get back from break. Council recess in July. It's either late July or early August, so we'll see how that works out. But okay. Any other questions on this item? Seeing none, we will continue this to that time with direction to staff with a number of report backs. So ordered. Okay. And I believe that leaves one more item, which is public comment. Mr. Mejia, is that correct?
Yes, Councilman.
Okay. Herman, public comment? General public comment? Not here? Okay. So that concludes this meeting. Thank you all very much.